recording. The March 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the South Whidbey Parks and Recreation District is called to order at 6:03 p.m. Is there anyone for public comment? All right. We will move on to the approval of the minutes. There are 3 different sets of minutes for review and approval. There was the board workshop on February 7th. There was regular meeting minutes on the 15th. And then the second special board meeting minutes from February 28th. Carrie, safe to assume that we need to take them individually?
I don't think so, yes.
Okay. All right, has every commissioner had an opportunity to review the February 7th workshop minutes?
Yes.
Are there any questions or changes? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the February 7th minutes from the February 7th workshop.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the February 7th board workshop minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Jake, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The board workshop minutes are approved. Moving on to the February 15th regular meeting minutes. Has every commissioner had an opportunity to review?
Yes.
Any changes, comments? All right, and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 15th.
I will second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the regular meeting minutes from the February 15th meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Jake, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the regular meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to the February 28th special board meeting minutes. Has every commissioner had an opportunity to review?
Yes.
Yes.
Any changes or comments? And entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the February 28th special board meeting minutes.
I will second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the February 28th special board meeting minutes. All those approved say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Jake, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. Or excuse me, Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the February 28th special board meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Matt, would you lead us through?
Sure. All right, next, do it at the board. So if you haven't seen our reports before, favorable is up in all cases. So this is the cumulative report, and you can see the projection for the year is the net budget projection in green, with expenses below the line and revenue above the line. As of February, you can see relative, our actual relative to plan is roughly 23K favorable. Next slide. So this shows the revenue picture. Revenue is just slightly unfavorable, 4K, with that coming from levy. This is cumulative January and February. And that's troubleshot with the county. It appears that they sent the tax billing notifications late this year, just slightly. So our tax receipts are being delayed slightly. So we're just slightly behind, but that will catch itself up in probably by the end of April. Next slide. Fortunately, we've been doing a good job across the staff with expense control. You can see we're 27K favorable expense control. Those are cumulative. Shown. Next slide shows the situation with fund balances. So you can see the ML fund being drawn down while we're in this period of the year. Remember how our structure is to use beginning cash in the first quarter while we're waiting on significant property tax receipts. So we're using beginning cash, drawing down M&O, and that'll recover as those tax receipts are received by the district hopefully in March and April. And you can see that we're on plan with the reserve fund based on the resets that we made in January. And you can see that in the detail of the budget report. If you want to pull that up, Carrie, the chart data, just something to explain in case there's any confusion about how we accounted for this. So if you remember in past years, we had not clearly accounted for the transactions we made between the reserve fund and the M&O fund at year end. We would always say we would do them at year end, but we actually did them in January. So these are the January transactions, and you can see if Carrie can float over those comments. So in this file, you can see a comment that's there. Yeah, so this shows that M&O went to reserve to plus up the reserve fund. Remember, the reserve fund set to 25% of the meeting year's total expenses. So that was plus from M&O to reserve, and you can see these transactions because we see, if you scroll up, Carrie, to revenue. So this is the data that feeds the charts. We see that transaction in as revenue. I mean, it's not technically revenue. So the way we show it is a budgeted amount for the same thing, so there is no variance to budget, and an equal and offsetting transaction reserve out also with a budget item that's the same amount, so there is no variance to budget. So again, there's no net effect to our budget, it's just moving money between accounts, and we just had not done a clear picture or a clear job of explaining that and showing that in past years, so that's why you see those comments, that's why you see those offsetting transactions. Anyway, okay, so that said, any questions on any of the slides or information? Great, if none, then we can go to the vouchers. There's a change to the vouchers, most notably because this is from our design firm for the Aquatic Center, ARC Architects. We're in the voucher list at their billed amount for last month for roughly $26,000. The terms of the contract that Doug executed with ARC the payment terms are net 90. So we've chosen to push that payment out into either March or April. You'll see that the total voucher amount was reduced by that invoice, that 26,000, roughly 26K invoice. So that's the only, that's the most significant change. Do you want to touch on any other changes? Yeah, that's on page 2, about halfway down on the sheet that you got printed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the updates are we did payroll today, and these figures are the updated payroll amounts. This was updated in twice, so that's zeroed out right there. We added the permit fee for the sign for Maxwell and Trails Park. We updated the amount for Peak Software. We decided to renew it at 6 months instead of 12 months, and we're adding cloud hosting. And the idea is that in 6 months we may be thinking about a campground more and put it out to bid for a new registration software that can accommodate that as well. We added PSE bill. We added some purchases for labor law poster, office supplies, and this was just a transfer that we had a credit on the credit card that was transferred over to my card. We updated our retirement contributions, did our payroll taxes, updated the point and pay credit card fees. And this is just a note about a transfer that we're going to be doing. This is not in the totals above. This is to reimburse the M&O fund for vouchers that we paid for Maxwell Trails Park. If you recall, there was about $10,000 that we were earmarking for finishing up getting that going. And and so the next amount will probably be the signage.
What's the updated total?
The updated total, that is the updated.
That's 71,313.51. Okay. The other thing I'll note about Carrie mentioned payroll. So one of the things we did in following Doug's departure is update payroll approvals, and that worked. It's now worked for 2 months straight. It involved getting me set up with an account and permissions and a verification application, but that's now worked smoothly. It took us, I don't know how long, 30 minutes,
Yeah.
something like that total. So that's working smoothly. People are getting paid on time. So, any questions on the voucher listing?
All right, if there's no further discussion or comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers from M&O. In the amount of $71,313.51.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the vouchers for the M&O fund in the amount of $71,313.51. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, I.
Jake, aye.
And I,
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the vouchers are approved. Thank you, Matt.
thank you.
All right, Carrie, we'll move on to the staff report.
Okay, as soon as he's done doing a couple of things, he's gonna give his part, this guy's gonna give his part of the report.
So, currently upcoming classes, still got lots of pickleball, just talked to most of the pickleball people, so we're gonna continue with the 14 different 2-hour sessions through the month of April, because nobody trusts the weather. Dropping volleyball 2 days a week. Futsal will be going on Saturdays through the end of this month. We currently have the Future Falcons 5th and 6th grade basketball tournament at the end of the month to fill the gap since we didn't have the upstairs gym at the community center. Intro to pickleball class starts Monday. That filled up in about an hour. Puppy Foundation starting April Fool's Day. Reactive Dog Clinic April 2nd. And Canine Nose Work will resume again on April 8th. So that one, we have a lot of people that had originally signed up for the January classes, or instead we're just gonna, the ones that said they wanted to stick around, just go like 75%.
I'm sorry.
Well, how many people at Canine Nose Work classes were sticking around to the next ones?
Oh, yeah, maybe half-ish.
Okay, so there'll be some spots to be filled. Just had the last game for youth basketball this last Saturday. 1st and 2nd grade boys, we had 34 players. 3rd and 4th grade boys, 25. 3rd and 4th grade girls, 14 players. Instead of getting some ribbons or something for them, I bought packs of basketball cards for all the kids. Girls got WNBA cards, boys got NBA cards. We had 38 monthly passes. Actually, that's up to 43, I think, now. So we have 43 different people that have purchased monthly passes for pickleball. Summer activity guide deadline is today for submitting activities. Had a bombardment at the last minute, so that's wonderful that everybody was getting their stuff turned in on time. This will be the April 6th issue of the Whidbey Weekly, and we should have hard copies in hand for distribution the days following, but we'll be posting it to the website on Thursday, April 6th. Photo that we will be giving to Whidbey Telecom. Didn't come that great right here, but it's the team photo of every different player that we have going right here. So.
I don't think Tom's gonna make it tonight, but it's waiting to hear back from Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding a spring walk through the lakes. He is still waiting as of today. had all of the vault toilets pumped at the lakes, and I forgot to mention in the voucher list, one item was removed, which was the bill for paying for the toilets being pumped. The Department of Fish and Wildlife, our agreement with them is that they pay it, so they are gonna pay it directly rather than reimbursing us, which is great. Starting to do cleanup and getting ready for the opening of fishing season in April. Had graffiti to deal with the restroom at Goss Lake and repainted it. It's the voucher listings for lots of paint supplies. High school sports have started and the boys soccer teams begin practicing. At the sports complex, sports programs are starting up and the park is getting very busy. Mowing is becoming a weekly task again as spring is approaching. There's no director's report, but I would like to add to that upcoming events and confirm that we have planned to have our special board meeting with executive session March 20th at 5:30 p.m.
Midnight, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I forgot one thing on mine, because I told Krista. There's a local that is looking to create a indoor pickleball facility, and he made it for an ad in our monthly newsletter that goes out and emails to try and get a gauge on if there's actually enough interest in the area for people to want an indoor facility, what they'd be willing to pay, how often they pay, are they snowbirds, and the likes. So, and I know the Whidbey Pickleball Club has also been passing that around. So, just a heads up.
As a private club, essentially.
Yes.
I knew the roller bar was open 2 days a week for indoor pickleball.
It's a good way to diversify.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take over.
Is there any way to gauge whether or not it's getting any traction on that, or?
I can ask him. I play with him usually once a week, so.
I think it was just publicized, like I first saw it like a week ago maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I can go look at the analytics, because I did put something on Constant Contact, so I can see how many people click through to it. But I can also just ask him feedback if he's not wanting to.
And the organized pickleball group, are they backing it, or?
Yeah, I mean, Barry Hayward, the president of Whidbey Pickleball, sent it out in their monthly newsletter too. So I think it's, in looking at it, I mean, I can understand definitely why I would never deter anybody from it, and I don't think it really takes away from our offerings right now. But there are some people that want to, they like the idea of a racket club, or they like the idea of playing on a top-notch indoor facility. The place we play right now doesn't have heat in the winter, so they probably want to heat too.
If you look at the advertising I saw for it, specifically advocated for our project, our outdoor project as well. So saying we fully support what the park district is doing with the outdoor courts. We support the current program, and we think this is just additive. So it was not. I think it was designed as kind of this holistic. Let's just grow the footprint.
I think the numbers are growing so rapidly that it's not going to make any difference anyway, because you're still not going to meet the need that's out there.
Right.
I think that's what we found with these last few months, where we kind of absorbed some of those pickleball groups during the winter time, is just kind of, if you build a table companies. I mean, I could probably add 4 or 5 more sessions a week, and they would show up to them.
Wouldn't a good comparison be our proposed aquatic center and the Island Athletic Club?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The more there is, the better for our community.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the doghouse, the canine work that's done? Is that all done? Because I know it's going to come up later in our agenda. Is that done at the doghouse?
Yes.
All of
That's
it?
why it's called that.
It's not done anywhere else, but just there, right?
We can't have them and do it.
Well, I was just
Outdoors,
curious if other
outdoors.
facilities are being used as we talk about recreation, our future plans, that's why I'm asking.
Right now, it only gets used for those dog classes. The reason we had to kind of adapt it was because they couldn't continue doing them in here.
But it was done in here, right?
It was done in here,
That's
and
what I
then
thought.
you can go to the district.
Yeah, the county said we couldn't have dogs.
Okay.
And the only issue is one of the things that we had talked about when we were doing the campground walk around was using that facility or part of that facility because it's plumbed as, first phase bathroom, shower facility for the campground phase 1 or A or whatever we call it. So that was the only, when we were in there talking about that, it was clear that the main section of that building was being, I don't know what the percentage of the time it's utilized for classes, but a lot, or at least it was at that period.
Yeah, right now we're looking 3 to 4 days a week.
After we left this building, we had classes conducted in the crow's nest for a time, but because of the lack of ADA accessibility, we can't use that anymore. Because the elevators.
And you just didn't have the 320 meeting on that.
It was not on the original.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so at no factor.
We're confirmed.
All right, any questions? Staff report. Mary and Scott, we will move on to unfinished business, the comprehensive plan program. We'll start with the South Whidbey Aquatic Center. Looks like we're going to start with the topo, the geo, and ARC.
I had that a little further.
We can do that if you want to.
Unless you want to
around,
go
we can.
first.
Yeah, so and if you want, I can do a quick intro
That'd be
for Jim.
fantastic.
So, yeah, so Jim Nelson is the representative of PA Davidson, the bond firm that Doug struck an agreement with to participate with us as we move towards this potential bond for the Aquatic Wellness Center. The timing that was discussed most recently within the pool, the joint aquatic center committee between the foundation and the district, Derek and I representing the district, was this November ballot. And so we reached out to Jim to say if it was this November, and we've been talking about the situation with the schools bond and everything else, if it was this November, tell us what the timeline is. And if you look at this first document that he's sending out, the timeline walks us back to today, this meeting, March of 2023, in order to be on a timeline, a trajectory to get something on the ballot in November. We don't have to put anything on the ballot now because the registration requirement for the ballot is August, but we need to start into things like voter education and informing the public from the district staff. So this timeline led to Jim, asking Jim to come and present to us to help get the entire board more familiar with the bond process. What is this? What are the costs? What are the steps needed to get from here to there? And so Jim's going to do that. What you'll see also in there is the other element of discussion with the Joint Aquatic Committee has been the issue of the work that ARC has been doing on the initial phase of the design, getting us to an idea of what we think this facility is going to cost. And we had this feasibility study that was done, funded by the foundation, by another third party, led by this company, Ballard King. They came up with a number somewhere around 25 million. The ARC initial design work came up with a number somewhere around 25 million. They had a high number of 26.5, and they had a low number of 25.3 or something like that. So it's still early, but there are two data points that are in that same range. And that both those numbers came from the survey that we did. That we got 1,700 plus responses on. What did the survey tell us? That's what led into that general, facility layout, and that layout is what led to the $26 million number. So what Jim's firm does as part of the service they provide the district is the calculations of what does that mean for a ballot measure, what's the millage rate for different values, and so one thing you'll see from Jim is the calculations centered around that kind of a number. And the last thing I'll say before I yield the floor to Jim is that the one thing you'll see is the potential that ultimately the bond issuance is less than that total number, and that's to account for the fact that there is going to be fundraising that goes on outside of a publicly voted bond. That's going to happen in parallel with this. One thing is a capital campaign, private capital campaign that the foundation's leading, that could raise something between $1 million and $3 or $4 million. There's also the state, who's going to contribute additional capital. They've already given us $400,000. They're going to give us another, who knows how much this year, and then probably additional requests next year. And then other sources like the LWCF grant that we went to the RCO for. All those things, if we add up several $1 million in those things, that would reduce the amount of bonds that we would ultimately issue. So that's why you'll see numbers lower than that $26, $27 million number, because that may not end up being required for the financing if these other sources are able to be developed. So anyway, sorry. So Jim, with that lead in,
Thanks, Matt.
you have the floor.
He always gives great summaries. We had a conference call last week, and after he paid me some accolades, I said, send me a resume for our conference. So we'll go out. So I'm known as a bond underwriter. I've worked with the district for a number of years. Just some nice bragging kudos to all of you and your work. You're rated AA minus, which is a great rating for a district your size. Incidentally, the first fire district in the state of Washington in 2017 to get the highest rating at AAA is Central Whidbey Island Fire and Rescue, right up the street of the road. And so for years, the rating agencies would say, there's no way a junior taxing district can hit the highest rating. So that was Central Whidbey. So that kind of, that's an example of what we call a peer rating. And so I think for your next issue, you could possibly be upgraded from AA minus to AA. Lowers your interest rate a little bit, but it's also a great public relations opportunity to say, here's an independent national rating agency affirming how well you manage your resources. So on this first document, it just kind of shows you, as a board, the district can only present factual information. So you can use district resources for factual information. You can put factual information on the bond, describe the project in your newsletter, as many publications as you want. Matt and Eric, as long as it's not a quorum of commissioners, you can go out and talk to the community groups and present all the facts. If someone like Carrie or Sky goes out and talks, then ideally you're doing it on your lunch hour and you're not using any district resources. But you could go out and talk to, I know you have enough on your plate, but you can talk to the chamber, the Kiwanis group or whomever. But the Public Disclosure Commission doesn't monitor things as closely as they used to, but technically if Carrie had a district vehicle, then she should go home, drop that off, drive her own personal vehicle to that Kiwanis lunch. Yes.
Can a commissioner speak at any of those organizations?
Yes, yeah, just as long as you don't form a quorum. So you couldn't have more than 3 of you, but you could have 2 and you could work that out. Commissioners can be on the yes vote committee on their own private time.
Okay.
But then no more than 2 commissioners could be on that yes vote committee. So it really comes down to factual information and Carrie and I talked this afternoon. I'm going to run some questions by the bond attorney. I think the question on can the yes vote committee advertise in the newsletter? And so I've got to find out. But
In our newsletter.
Yeah, in your newsletter. But one of the things that the Public Disclosure Commission looks at is what they call normal and regular use of business. So if you didn't have a monthly newsletter and all of a sudden you do your first inaugural newsletter just prior to an election, you're only allowed one newsletter publication. So you're free and clear to do your monthly newsletters. And you can have all sorts of factual information in there. You know, there might be a presentation by your architect, and then you could record that and upload that, put it on your website. So you can create a tab on your website and just have all sorts of factual information. But the clock is ticking, so to speak, and so March 17 to 31, I'm kind of pushing the yes vote in this way, but who will be in charge of signage? How will you pay for the cost of signage? Usually the answer there is it comes from, if you're a fire district, it comes from the union, but maybe there's going to be donations. The district can't pay for that, but if the district could do just vote, on November 7th, that would be okay. But you can't say vote yes. You can't be persuasive. So if the volunteer election committee is going to do that, then maybe you have some sort of fundraiser, pancake breakfast. You have to figure that out. Who's going to coordinate letters to the editor for a yes vote? Attending like information booths when you have community meetings, and when you have certain community events here at the park or wherever in Langley, then it's good to have a presence there and have flyers. So you could either have factual information that the district does, or you could have the yes vote committee with their information. Who's going to be in charge of social media and Facebook? Who will be in charge of sending out the yes vote brochure? Doorbelling may or may not work in your area. It's a different, with COVID. Getting endorsements from certain key individuals. I worked on the city of Langley's voting bond for the sewer improvements, and the mayor at the time, very involved. I understand that he moved out of the city of Langley, but something like that to get his, I can't even remember his name, but he essentially served, pardon?
No,
Callison.
Tim Callison.
Yeah. But something like that seems to be very influential. So that's the key, is that the district can, on your dime, you can send out a factual information brochure. I'm happy to review it. The bond attorney would be happy to review it. And that's okay to do as long as it's just factual. You're not asking for this. So we definitely encourage you to do that. Then the volunteer committee, yes vote committee kind of, hopefully implements all these things, and you work that between April 1 and October 20th. The ballots go out on October 20th, mailed out to everybody's home. The election's on November 7th, but we find that roughly a third of the voters will fill out that ballot in the first week. So it's key that whatever mailers you have going out, that I think it should be received by the voters at least a few weeks prior to October 20th. And then you think about what the district's going to do. Speaking at Kiwanis, Rotary, the Chamber, all the different community events, articles in the district newsletter, getting the newspaper to do coverage. And again, filled out October 20th, and then the date's November 7th. So it's kind of an interesting time. School districts are having difficulty getting board approval. Part of it is coming off of COVID. My wife's a teacher, so I gotta be careful what I say. But I know, just dinner time conversation, there's some frustration with the hybrid teaching model. Now some of the grading is coming out. And so my colleagues that work with school districts on voter bonds, they don't look too happy these days. I'm just not seeing. But others, are approving. Fire districts have been successful. Sivy Metropolitan Park District, their issue did fail second attempt last year, 27 million. They were on COVID. So each area is kind of unique. And it's great. Personally, I think there's a renewed support for parks now as a result of COVID. People, I think, have a better appreciation. They're using their parks. Most of the time I went to the office, but there was a 3-month period where I worked from home. We lived in Mill Creek. We had a community park. And it was like, I'd be on the phone just looking out the windows. I couldn't believe all the people out there, And so I thought, yeah, that's, think they have a better understanding. So this is helpful information. I won't run through every page, but again, on page 2, these would be voting bonds, so they don't fall under your levy limit. It's not being paid by the current expense fund. It's a special excess levy that only goes with the bond. In fact, you don't even see the money. So what will happen is if you issue 27 million in bonds or whatever number you select, you'll get 100% of that amount, which is great from the voter standpoint. So the financing costs are essentially built into the interest rate. Plus you can reimburse yourself on all the soft costs, like these expenses you have now with ARC, the architect, and anything else. And then I think I'd encourage the bond attorney to prepare a reimbursement resolution that would be adopted by the commissioners. It's a simple 3-page reimbursement resolution. You go on record. But if you're expending what we call hard costs, capital improvement costs now, you want to have the ability to replenish that cash from future bond, then the IRS says you must approve a reimbursement resolution. If after 60 days you haven't, then you've lost that opportunity. So it's a great safety net, doesn't cost you anything, doesn't commit, but it's one of those things where if your project came in under budget, you already had the bond monies, then you go, oh gosh, how are we going to spend this? So maybe you go back and look at some equipment that you purchased this year. So just as long as you have that written with enough flexibility, ballot title where it would say aquatic center and other capital related, capital improvement purposes related.
Do you and Matt understand that and how we could leverage that? So do you and Matt understand that, how we could leverage that?
To a degree, yeah. And he mentioned also the cost of having it on the ballot can be recouped as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and with all these sources of funds, as we've learned from the state capital issuance, as we've learned from the potential LWCF grant, there's categories of things you can pay for and categories of things you are expressly forbidden to pay for. And so just navigating those things is one of the key elements of this. And so that's a high-level snapshot of it, but that's work that we still need to do to figure out, okay, yeah, these things are clearly covered and we can include, and these things we can't. So more work to come there, but the concept of the reimbursement resolution is something that's new, and clearly we have to do it.
So you're a guide for us on that. We've got the legislature with the chamber.
Yep.
Right,
Commerce Department.
Commerce Department, thank you, as another guide.
And then RCO, we have Allison Dello, who's our RCO rep. So we have a pro from Dover in each one of those places to help us with. Yeah, and Allison in the past has been extremely helpful on this is acceptable, this is not. And it all seems. I mean, the good thing is when you look at it, it's all logical. Like this is a reasonable expense, and that's allowed, and this is not a reasonable expense, and it's not allowed. So there's nothing I've found so far that's kind of incongruous. Like it all fits.
So as a recap, capital bonds can only be used for capital improvement purposes. The one caveat is during the construction period, if you hired a construction manager or you had a staff person where that was kind of their sole role, you can cover those related costs, those operating costs, salary costs, just during the construction period.
Right.
So sometimes, that's helpful.
Right, and that's an example to me of how it makes sense. That gives you a better chance to execute the construction project successfully, efficiently, on budget. So that's why it ends up in the allowed category. Like I said, seems to make sense.
Yeah, and then sometimes some municipalities will look at the cost and they'll also look at like maybe, equipment replacement and go, oh, maybe we got another, not to sound like a promoter debt, but maybe you've got another 500,000 or $1 million you want to add to that. And maybe that could be more appealing, could be like district-wide improvements. So like with fire districts, I talked with one district, he goes, oh yeah, we're going to go out for fire station. It's going to be at the south end of Whatcom county in this particular district. And I said, well, what about the rest of the district? And he goes, oh, I haven't thought about it. I said, do you have any equipment? He goes, yeah, we're gonna pay cash this year. I said, why don't you roll that into the bond? And now you can talk about replacing equipment at all the stations. You didn't have to go out for a levy lift so soon. And it only increased the levy rate for the bond by a few cents. So that's an example where it's gonna help garner more support because they can talk about district-wide improvements versus just the south district. So you can think about that. Next page on slide 3, you're in a great position. You have non-voted debt capacity of 27 million. Non-voted debt capacity is like credit card capacity. Just because you have it doesn't mean you can afford to use it. But you're in a fantastic position where you're not hitting any ceilings or anything. With voter approval, you have a total of 90.3 million. You have 2 small issues, principal not outstanding, and then that leaves you with a balance of 89.6 million. If you took on a $27 million voter bond, then that would drop that 89.6 down to about 62.6 million. So you got plenty of debt capacity. That's helpful for planning purposes. I suppose if somebody asks, well, what happens if we have cost overruns after all this of $1 million or $2 million? What are options? Well, one is to do a non-voting bond. So hopefully that won't happen, but you'd have to look at it and go, okay, is that within our current expense fund? Could we handle, roughly you could say for every $1 million you finance on a non-voted basis, the annual payment is about $70,000. So,
And so if you look at examples, past projects in the last 10 years, the one in Port Angeles used non-voted bonds, and they're within the city structure in Port Angeles, so they have M&O budget to repay those non-voted bonds. But then look at another example, Fircrest, one of the places we looked in Tacoma, they went to the voters with a voted bond exclusively, so more common to do this for us where our budget is, we're net zero in terms of capacity.
yeah, you probably want to all keep it voted bonds.
Yeah.
It's the most secure. It's a special excess levy. There's nothing that can ever interfere with that payment. I mean, technically, only an act of war or catastrophic earthquake. So it's the safest way to go for the district. Page 4 just shows you some examples. Moses Lake Aquatic Center and Parks, I worked on that. Every time they had a new big box retailer come in, like Home Depot or Lowe's, they would call me up and they'd say, okay, we're getting a new sales tax revenue of 300,000, 500,000. Run that out and tell us what we can afford on a non-voting bond. Lazy River, Surf Rider, and so it's pretty interesting. They have like an old 1960s outdoor pool, but then it's combined with all these other things.
So Doug, is that on the Wave Riders?
That's what I was
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I had to go over and do a due diligence to my family. Yeah, those surf riders, those are scary. Siding Metropolitan Park District, they've done a combination of non-voted bonds, voted grants. William Shore Memorial Pool District, which is a Metropolitan Park District now, I think it's called Shore Pool District. They did a combination of non-voted bonds, voted bonds, grants, and then they did the first parks revenue bond, which was really interesting. So that's a very successful project. They took their old facility and they had a track record and kind of knew what to expect on user fees, and basically dug it all out, kept the same roof and structures, and then built it out from there. So, and at City of Fircrest, they went to the voters for $13 million. They have a lot of kind of old money in Fircrest, and so the children and the families stepped up, and they hired a professional fundraiser. They raised, voters approved $13 million. We issued $10 million, and they fundraised $3 million. So it's a great savings to the taxpayers, and they did a press release on that. So it seems to be a very popular concept on these aquatic centers. I think I've received 6 calls in the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of calls on aquatic centers. So now the bad news, page 5. You look at these interest rates, and we got spoiled with 20-year money around the neighborhood of 2%. This is the all-time historic low going back to the 1930s, which is pretty amazing. Here's December 31st, 2021. The Fed started raising rates in 2022, and you know this from market, and they just skyrocketed. We thought, we were in a correction phase and things were looking good, but then they popped back up. Right now, the outlook we're hearing, and we're no experts on crystal ball, that the Fed will continue with some interest rate hikes. Those are short-term hikes, so it's not a direct correlation on long-term rates, but it does pull it up, and that hopefully in 2024 will stop the interest rate hikes. So that could be another benefit on how your structure is. What we're thinking is, if you went with 27 million, maybe you would do it, get voter approval hopefully, and then you issue it 2 series. So maybe 18 million you receive in February of 2024, so you'd be on the 2024 tax roll. And then maybe a year later, you issue the balance, whatever you need. So it could be 9 million, but if you came into grants, might only be 7 million, 5 million. And so then that would be savings to taxpayers. But by doing that, that'll help lower your levy rate a little bit. And it's a question for the architect, as long as you feel you can spend the bond proceeds in a 36-month period.
That's the IRS rule, right?
Yeah, the IRS rule has to do with reimbursement resolutions, because your municipality issuing bonds, you're tax exempt. And so they want you to have a reasonable expectation to spend the bond proceeds within 36 months. And then during the period, well, so like let's say you receive 18 million on February 2024. So 18 million will be wired to the county treasurer's account. They'll hold that money the whole time. It won't go into your account. You'll just instruct them on the drawdowns. But then they'll invest it for you, and you'll have investment earnings, and those earnings also have to be used in the project. But that helps sort of like the contingency.
So when does that 36-month clock start? Would it start upon approval of the ballot measure?
No, it starts on the first series of bonds, and then for each series. So ideally, you only want to do 2 series because you have financing costs with each one. So if you issued in February of 2024 and funded 18 million, then you want to make sure by February 2027 you have that all spent. Then you do a second series, say December 2024, and you would that would have to also be spent by say 27. So you could issue
By
a second.
December, not.
Yeah, whenever you.
Time to issue.
Yeah, I was just thinking out loud. Maybe you'd want to do it maybe you do February 2025. Then it would have to be all spent by February 2028. So each series, you have 36 months to spend the bond proceeds.
And just from a timing standpoint, what ARC is telling us in their timeline, if we continue steadily, we don't stop or pause or things don't get in the way, they show completion and opening the doors to the public in the middle of 2025. So more than enough room to spend within 6 months, given what they're talking about. And the advantage we have with them, and one of the reasons that they were selected, is they are the ones who've done many of these projects. The one in Port Angeles, William Short, they managed the construction. It was done during COVID on that timeline. And now they've got 1,000 people a day. They're open 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, cranking 1,000 people a day through it. So they lived that all the way through. And so I think when they're telling us and giving us these timelines, they're based in recent practical reality, I think. So yeah, to me that 36-month window is well within their capability.
That's great. Slide 6, so this is really the meat and potatoes of it. So you can see if you were to take on a $22 million issue, 25 years, when Matt and I first started talking about this, I think like 2 years ago, some of the numbers, the levy rates were so low. So easy for me to say, but you know, here it is, 22,014 cents on a $400,000 home or per 400,000. It's an annual increase of $55.62, monthly increase of $4.63. If it was a $500,000 home, then it would be $69.50 and a monthly increase of $5.79. So,
And just to make a point, Jim, that valuation question came up, we were using that $400,000 estimate when the school district published their capital bond information. Their calculations were based on a $500,000 valuation, so adjusting to that makes sense to make sure that it's clear to the voters what, you know, the math is the same, I think. So Jim's kind of penciled updates to this, to that $500,000 number is probably what will end up in our factual information, you know, communication, so we're not different from them. I don't think it makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. And you can see 25 million, levy rate of about 16 cents. So on a $400,000 home, annual increase of $63 a year, monthly increase of $5.27. That's on 400,000. On a $500,000 home, increases $79 a year, monthly increase is $658. And then you can just jump over to 27 million. Again, 17 cents on a $500,000 home, and $85 a year, and on a monthly basis, it's like $7.11. So from my standpoint, it's pretty low when you look at, you know, monthly costs for a private health plan. Hopefully the voters see it the same way. We assume that a growth assumption, this is something you don't have to really go into detail in your presentations to the quorums group members, but it's very common for school districts, fire districts, cities, park districts, and others, where you assume a certain growth rate. So we ran it a couple different ways. One is we assume an annual growth rate of 4% per year in assessed valuation. And then we assume another scenario where we go 5% the first 5 years, 4% the next 10 years, and 3% thereafter. And basically the same difference, might be a difference of 1 cent. But we think that is you know, a realistic growth rate. If for some reason we hit another 2008, 2009 market, yeah, you don't pick up, there's no financial risk to the district. So it's not like you're making up the difference. It's more that you want to make sure you have a conservative growth rate. So like, you know, if you're just, you might say, looking to get the bond passed and assuming a growth rate of 15% a year, then you're probably setting yourself up for some criticism. But I think those are great, and you know, they're low levy rates. A lot of times we'll see it, you know, over 25 cents, over 50 cents. So I think, you know, instead you've got to step up over the school district because they're looking at 80 million, a much higher levy rate.
Just as an example, Burcrest voted bond was 67 cents per 1,000. Smaller population.
So what we would suggest in this market with the rising rates, if you're okay with it, is maybe your ballot measure would say for a principal amount of voted bonds not to exceed 27 million for a term not to exceed, say, 29 years or 30 years. You continue to quote the levy rate for 25 years, but if rates did creep up some more, then we could just add on a few years and still hit that target. That's what we've been doing with a lot of municipalities. School districts especially are very sensitive to what's quoted. So it's all going to say estimated levy rate. That just gives you some flexibility, especially with last year and this year, and the way the the Federal Reserve is influencing the market. Is any questions so far on these numbers? And we'll redo this, and I'll replace the 400,000 with 500,000. I guess, can the board kind of give me a sense on the range we'd like to sort of fine tune that range, like, you know, do you want to just see 22 million, 25, and 27, or do you have some requests for some numbers?
Can I ask you a question about the second bond? You said like you could run it, your example was I think 29, right? But you run it in, what do you say, 25? So if, like Matt was saying, ARC is condensed timeline or they follow through on the timeline currently and they're done in 25, then my guess is that you're waiting to actually run that second one, right? I mean, you don't want to let it lapse too long where you don't have enough money. What is the fine line there?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I'll reach out to, is it Paul Lewis?
Paul Curtis.
Pardon me?
Paul Curtis.
Paul Curtis, yeah. I'll reach out to him and ask him to give me an estimate of construction drawdown schedule on a monthly basis. And then I can kind of work backwards. So, yeah, we want to make sure you have enough to kind of get you through.
That's where my mind went.
And then a year later, the nice thing on the second series is it gives you some flexibility so that if you do come into additional funds, then you can lower that amount on the voted part.
Right.
So instead of, if it's 18 and 9, then maybe the 9 million turns into 7 million, and then you're heroes in your eyes, taxpayers, and you can do a press release and say, oh gosh, all our good work and everything, we're able to save money. And bonds, so, you know, there's another option is financing with banks, but banks only go out 15 years, 15 fixed rates, and so that's why sometimes if you talk to a bank, they'll try and convince you to go 15 years because it's in their best interest. But we're trying to give you the option that basically you're going to get both approved. The answer there is to finance it for a longer period of time.
And you were saying capital expenses, like if you didn't, you come under budget, you now have capital money to spend. It seems like voter approval, it would be better than, you know, you mentioned these fire districts and how they spent that money, right? I was envisioning that in a parks district, and so you decide a water slide or something, you know, you kind of have to balance that with voter approval too, right?
Yeah.
Because it would seem to me coming under budget is a really big sell to the public.
Right. Yeah.
Using that money in other capital ways is a discussion that I assume we have to have later on. Right?
Yeah, which is whatever is described in the ballot title. So that's the only thing you can use the money for, even if
Preemptively.
Pardon me.
Preemptively.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. Yeah, so that's kind of the way it goes, and so whatever number you select, I think you're in a great position for low levy rate. So do you think if we're going to rerun the numbers, do you think we should focus in the range of 22 to 27 million, or?
I mean, that's, like I said, we've got two estimates from two separate firms, including the one that's working on it right now, that just did several projects in the region. So I think those numbers are in that range, are as reliable as we're going to get.
Okay, and then what we'll do is I'll talk to Paul Curtis and then figure out on the 2 series what would be the series for the first one and the second one, taking into account the second one, it could be lower depending on the grant monies. And then by doing the 2 series, you know, you issue the first series, say February 2024, that's one assessed valuation base. But a year later, it's going to be a higher number. So you're kind of easing the taxpayers into it in a sense. And that should lower your levy rate by maybe 1 cent. So, you know, each little bit helps.
For the bond measure, do we plan on incorporating how much we think it's going to cost the public to use after construction?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so one of the topics that we've had all along the way is, and it was one of the elements of the survey feedback was there's 2 costs. There's the cost to construct, and then there's the maintenance and operations cost. we had talked about, Doug had talked about this as a supplemental M&O levy. So we have an M&O levy that we're operating on now. Whenever the facility, it's something that's not needed until the facility is staffed and up and running. But so let's say sometime in 2025, we would go to the voters for a supplemental M&O levy to operate the facility. The communication will include both of those.
Okay.
Both of those sets of numbers. Here's the cost to build it. Here's what it's going to cost to operate it. Because to your point, when we went to the voters in 2008 and did the voter information sessions, that was one of the first elements of feedback was, what's it going to cost to operate it and maintain it? And at that cycle, we didn't have any idea. Now we have that understood in great detail from these other facilities, from the feasibility study. We had the consultant there had significant experience maintaining and operating pools. Doug did the work as part of the feasibility study on the staffing estimate, and he had previous experience operating pools. So we now know in much greater detail what that's gonna be, and that'll be included in the communication.
So like a range,
completely clear.
child to a family pass.
Yeah, that too. So this is just showing, this is what it's gonna cost, in the form of the M&O levy. And then, that kind of user fee profile, family rates, all that kind of thing. So there's been some work done in the feasibility study to look at that, but now that the project is moving forward with the aquatic consultant on the design team working for ARC, we can get that figured out in, like I said, in much closer detail. So yes.
And then will you have like kind of a two-tiered charge where people that are outside the district will be charged a higher user fee?
Yeah. Yes, that's common. And another part of that is surveying local. What's the fee structure in Oak Harbor? What's the fee structure in Anacortes? What's it in Malik Terrace? What's it in Linwood Pool? What's it, the ones that people, Forest Park and Everett, like what is the regional expectation, and factoring it into that as well. So that'll be part of it too. Because a lot of people do have experience in those places.
I think, that makes me feel good. I think the public will appreciate knowing what it'll cost them entirely.
Yes.
From their house taxes to their admission.
Great. Slide 7 just shows. Oh yeah.
So, for clarity purposes, are we doing 3 levels or 4 levels? Are we doing 22, 25, 27, or are we dipping down as low as 20?
No, and I think that, maybe 20, 22, 25, 27 is reasonable, just because if we're wildly successful in capital fundraising.
When? So we have to manifest when.
Yeah, I mean, the state has already contributed, recognized this as a project. So the state, and if you look at the example of like Port Angeles, the state contributed over 3 years from the capital budget. And I think the total was something like $2 or $2.5 million. The state contributed from capital, so not grant money, and that's where we got last year, 400,000. And the same thing is happening in Lopez Island. And Progress, same story. So we will have success there because the state's already said it's a named project in the state capital budget. So
4 ranges.
Yeah, and the foundation has done the capital feasibility study that has said fundraising capital is feasible. I think the minimum threshold that was analyzed was $1 million, and probably the maximum is something like 3 to 5. So most of the feedback from that capital campaign feasibility said that private donors are more likely to contribute when they see the public commitment. So if the public says we want this facility, then private donors say we'll chip in. So passage of a bond is probably key to that. The foundation has started work though with a consultant locally who believes that there's a room to get commitments, pledges from donors in the lead into a ballot measure. So I think that'll happen in parallel. But I think the feasibility feasibility, the capital campaign feasibility study says that that potential exists on South Whidbey with private donors. So I think dropping that total from 27 down to 25 or 23, I think is completely within the realm of plausible, given the experience of these other municipalities and entities in the region in the last 10 years. So, yeah, I think that in that range, I think 15 million is not realistic. I think the 1 million is just for calculation purposes.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you what the difference is on the number. So if you're okay, I'll just show you 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 million. That way you just
Sure.
kind of see each one, see the difference. Yeah,
Sure.
you could decide.
And see the benefit of raising $1 million has this material benefit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
mean, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Page 7 shows the rating, and again, you're AA minus, so your 3 grades are the highest rating. And usually I get the question, so anyway, the higher the rating, the lower the interest cost. Usually the next question on the next slide is, well, what can I do to possibly increase my chances for a higher rating? One is, Carrie and I were talking about this on slide 8, is a financial management policy. Just to formalize things that you're already doing, how you're auditing, to maybe consider a 6-year financial forecast instead of a 5-year, how you budget, just formalizing some of those things. So unrestricted cash goal, monthly financial reports, quarterly budget reports, equipment replacement plan, use of the capital facilities. So that's
Can you explain that, the process of presenting this presentation that we would make
to the
to
rating
achieve
agency.
this rate? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no particular hurry, but ideally, the commissioners would, and I'll send Carrie some examples, kind of what we call the gold standard robust financial management policies. They're about 13 pages long. But it's a key factor for the rating agencies. They really like it. I have seen some municipalities adopt a new financial management policy like a few days before the rating presentation. So that looks and feels a little suspect, you know, and so that's why I adopted a few months early would be good. But the rating, we'll coach and prepare, assuming voter approval. Afterwards, then we'll coach and prepare you for a rating presentation. And then we'll have a commissioner on that, commissioner 2 on that rating presentation. Carrie, Sky, Tom would be on there, probably somebody from Island County to talk about economic development. And so anyway, unfortunately, you have to listen to me for 2 hours, but you'll be over prepared, and yeah, it's an exciting process. You walk away with realizing, wow, these independent national rating analysts really have an appreciation for all your hard work on budgeting, financial forecasting, your audits, how you communicate. They're going to ask questions on what's your succession plan, what's your equipment replacement plan, do you have any future debt? So we talk about the history of your maintenance and your track record of the voters supporting the MNO levy, and then when is, you know, then we're naturally going to ask, when's the next time? Are you planning to go back to the voters for another MNO levy? If you said no, that would be a credit negative. Say, we want to hear you say yes.
Yes, that's not true.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But like we talked extensively this afternoon on whether you go accrual basis or cash basis, and I have to go back and read the original rating presentation to see. Usually what happens is if you're on cash basis, the 3rd sentence in every single rating report will say, we view this as a negative. But the way you offset that is you have a 6-year financial forecast or longer, and you have an equipment replacement plan. So, yeah, it's a pretty exciting process. At least I think so. So the next one, sorry, I'm almost done. So anyway, comments from others. Start the voter education process 7 to 12 months before the election date. Consider you're already doing a community survey, which is great. Newspaper articles, newsletters to inform the public. Statements of support from key community representatives. Factual information tab on the district's website. Use of social media, and then an open house. And I'm happy to come to some of your open houses. You should definitely have an open house. with your architect, and they're there with schematics or scale models. I think that's really helpful. And the next one is the key points to plan ahead. So we already talked about the reimbursement resolution, financial management policy, long-term capital improvement plan. You have a great volunteer election committee. I was impressed with how energetic they were the other night on the Zoom call. You think about outreach, voter education, and then to really kind of sell and make it clear on what are the benefits of this project. You talked about water safety, but then other things too. And, I think it's, so we've been in Mill Creek and we're with a private athletic club. We just switched to one that's a little bit cheaper, but you just start thinking about how people view this and compare it. So.
And then water safety is one big component of that, and wellness is the other big component.
Yeah. So just a couple, and then slide 11, again, that's an example of voter education. When you think about down to April 7th, the district begins the factual information campaign. Election committees, out there with their yes vote campaign. They first notify the bond attorney being drafting the ballot title. And then you'll have a couple readings of that, and that's strategic. Sometimes the newspapers cover your meetings, but to have it at a public meeting, you got your first draft, your second draft. Commissioners approve it, say July 19th. And then Carrie or someone from the district will make sure that it, we'll drive it up to the Island County Auditor's Election Office and make sure that's filed, I would say, well before August 1, because that's your deadline.
Yeah, so the bottom line there is that at our July meeting is the deadline to submit for us. We proceed down the path to agree on what's going on the ballot for November. So we've got between now and July to work through the drafts of that and get that sharper on the cost and the amount, right, and all those things.
Yeah, but I would suggest that you really hone in on what the amount would be, say, by May 1, because then that's going to be key to your factual information brochure. It's going to be key to the yes vote committee on what they're talking about.
Yeah, so like I said, they have a number, that estimate that we were just talking about is their best cost estimate now, and that's going to get better as they're going through this first schematic design phase. So, starting, if we decide we're starting now, we start now with the best information that they have for us, and then we sharpen the pencil. But I think it's going to be close.
Page 13, if for some reason you decided not to go with a ballot date of this November, then we would suggest you focus in April, approximately April 25th, 2024. I was explaining to Matt that February, for some reason the schools gravitate toward February. I think it's because they're in session, but personally I don't like it because you're losing the impact of your message. It's distracted by at Christmas time and then New Year's time. And so April, I think, is a good time. If you're in Eastern Washington and it's an outdoor pool, we usually say go with August. You're right in the heart of the sweltering times. And if you're in Eastern Washington pool, generally you don't want to go in November because you're trudging around in the snow. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. You definitely, November 2024 is the presidential election. So it'll be a huge turnout, which means we probably have more no voters turning out. So we usually say try and avoid November 2024, and then generally avoid 2025 because everything keys on the previous November general election. You have to have, there's a validation requirement of 40% turning out from the previous November. So if you were to put your bond issue in sometime in 2025, it's calculated off of that presidential election in 2024.
And is there any reason to, I hopefully don't push up to 26, but would there be any reason to avoid a midterm election? Does that run into the higher turnout number?
it's all based on the previous November.
So
So,
that, okay.
yeah,
So being on 2026 wouldn't necessarily be bad, because that would be based on 2024.
or that'd be based
Or
on
2025.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
And it was
then,
40%, you said?
yeah, and we can get that exact number, because what we do is we take 40% of the previous year's November turnout, and then we run what that number is, and then you have to take 60% of that number, and that tells you what your minimum yes vote count is. It sounds confusing, but we do.
It's just math.
Yeah, it's just, and then pages 14 through 17, it's just helpful information. Helpful for the district, helpful for elected officials, just thinking about messaging and community-based messages. On the last page on 17, it says, make sure everyone else is on the message to campaigns are all about defining the questions, controlling the terms of debate, getting the voters to absorb and retain your message, keep it simple and say it over and over. I think is really, I presented with a professional election consultant, so I get all this from this. There's
Did you review our factual brochure from when we did the 40-acre purchase a couple years ago?
I probably did, but I don't send that to me. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, so the two most recent ones were that one and the M&O
Yep.
mailing that we did. It's similar formatted. The factual, there's a table that shows here's the tax impact, here's what the payment, here's what your payment represents, that table from the earlier slide. And then here's what the public's going to benefit from. Here's the facility, here's what's going to be inside it. So cost, benefit.
Yeah, you could add some nice pretty pictures in there.
Yep.
You could even do a table similar to page 18 that Central Pierce did, where you could, so to speak, pick on your neighbors, and you could have Fidalgo Pool, Oak Harbor Pool, and some others, and you'd show their, their voted bond levy, they have an M&O levy, what the user fee is, just to kind of show that you're the best deal in town, if it comes out that way.
Any other further questions for Jim? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's really good.
Yeah, so what we, kind of the conclusion in the conversation, if we want to continue that, is it's our recommendation as representing the joint committee that we launch these efforts towards a November ballot. So that means launching the district factual information campaign, and then the foundation launching the Vote Yes campaign, building the materials, going through the draft resolution in May and June and July, just setting us on that path, because this is, in order to meet that timeline, this is when it needs to start. So, and I would suggest we do that with a motion. So before I made a motion, what are folks' thoughts on that timeline now that we've seen the whole snapshot of it?
I'm in agreement.
So, in the voter pamphlet, so I think it's gonna be fairly easy to round up someone to write a, pro statement.
Yeah.
But it is gonna be our obligation, as I understand it, to also make sure that there's someone to speak somewhat against the.
A constant, yeah.
Thank you.
And if you can't find anyone, then I think the county auditor will try. But you know who will help you with the pro statement will be your bond attorney, Faith Pettis. So, again, try to minimize enough work on your shoulders, but.
Well, Doug, there was an email from Doug that went out seeking the con
Yeah, and
statement
there
from the
wasn't
last
one.
cycle.
There wasn't.
I'm pretty sure
Wasn't
we
it?
did.
Got
Yeah,
Rob
we did.
Dalton, maybe?
We did.
Oh.
So I just know that Doug had crafted an email to the email list saying, hey, we need a con statement for the voter guide. And so I think you could just find that, resurrect it, and send a similar one.
If, for whatever reason, before we have to actually, whatever the deadline
July.
was, July, if we decided to push it out to April 2024, would we be losing momentum if we started now? You know what I mean? So if the recommendation is that you start this campaign 7 to 12 months out, April would be 13 to 14 months.
Yeah,
Is there anything to be
I
lost?
changed it for you, because ideally, we like, the earlier the better, usually say 9 to 12 months. And then it depends on your area. Some will do information blitz. I just did one for the hospital district over in Grand County. They've been to the voters the last 3 years, so they went for 1 year levy lid lifts, and then all of a sudden they went for a bond. So they were able to kind of rally their yes vote committee, and despite my concerns, it worked out just fine. So it depends on your area, the competition. It's usually safer though to add more time for voter education, just because there's more and more competition out there.
So by starting now, we're setting ourselves up for either November or April, kind of equal.
Sure. And I would say there's a couple of thoughts there. The public has been hearing about the project since, if you go back in the record, 2019, 2020, there's been a series of articles. I think it's totaled about 8 or 9 articles in the record, plus a number of Facebook posts from the foundation and other social media from the foundation, plus the survey that we did, the capital survey from the district that Doug put out, that we surveyed the ranking of capital projects, where the aquatic center was #1. And then the survey during the feasibility study that 4,300 and however many people were represented in that feedback. The dedicated survey that went to Island Senior Resources, we got 200 people in 3 hours to fill out the survey. So I think there is a level of voter education that has happened and awareness that's happened. And I just compared that myself to the school measure, which it took some serious digging to find out about. As to the school, there's just not that much history in the public discourse. So I think there's a lot of that's already happened. So I think, to your point, yes, I think it supports. It doesn't. To me, it's not reasonable to say we want to put it on the April ballot, because we just missed that window a couple weeks ago. But the school decided to do that. But to me, yeah, the November, and then if we decide based on what happens between now and then that April 2024 is a better timeline, then I think it supports that easily. I just think the window, this November window, seems like it might be good enough in terms of a chance to get the message out most clearly, like building on this history of voter information and voter education that.
Let me expand on mine, because I just said I was in agreement, but there's multiple reasons, and Matt and Marnie and Carrie, people have been in these meetings. I just think there's been so much preemptive work, and there is a momentum now. And Jim, to your comment about different seasons and changes, and maybe it's because I'm in education, but there's always this momentum at the beginning of a school year, collegiate, elementary, it doesn't matter what level we're talking about. And November brings that. The fact that the district is not running it at that time is even more so a reason that I think we stand a really, really good chance of having a lot of voter support. And Jim, you made me think of just the timing. We're talking about an indoor swimming facility. You're in the fall. People can no longer be outside.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And it's huge. It's huge in just the average, the average person. We try to do aquatic things in our program. And we don't do it in the fall, we can only do it in the spring and into the summer. And this opens a new venue.
Yeah.
The other thing that, I don't know if this plays into it or not, but from my mind, I just think voters during tax season, when they're filing their taxes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In April, they're going, I don't want to pay another dime. And here we are in November. I just think the mentality is more supportive in November. So
Related to that too, I didn't mention, but, you know, just as public information stewards and that factual information, I'm sure you can say, senior citizens may qualify for a senior citizen discount. Contact the Ivy County Assessor's Office to see if you qualify, and then you have the phone number. Because for some senior citizens, they will. It depends on one's age and then income. But it's just one of those things where you go, oh, that's a really good point. Okay, call them up and see.
the other part is the foundation is just so supportive. I mean, there's so many people there ready in place. I wish the school district had that up and running. I know that I'm in talks right now with our committee about forming that late in the game. So it's just, you know, I just think the pool is ready to rock. It's ready to go, and I wouldn't delay it.
You know, to Krista's comment, God forbid if the voters turned it down, then you already sort of have your backup plan. You go, okay, now we'll just capitalize on that support, that awareness, and we'll go back, put it on the April ballot, and pick up those additional percentage points. And, you know, maybe say in a scenario where you got 55, 57, 58%. You go, oh, so close. And then you kind of regroup, you look at the precincts, and capitalize on the support. And I feel bad saying that, but there's just so much competition out there for the taxpayer dollars that for some, you know, it takes two efforts. And
Do you have any sense of success rate for when someone, you know, when a measure has failed and they put it out again? Like, do you have any sense for how often that is then subsequently approved, or?
yeah, I know that if it's a really low percentage support, like City of Prosser did, where their city hall and police station burned down 2 years ago, and the community knew about it, they didn't capitalize on the support, and they waited and waited. They started their information campaign literally a few weeks before last November's election. So I wasn't surprised at all. They had like 30 or 35%. So it's dead in the water. They've put them years behind. And so on some of these, when the rate is so low, it really kind of puts you back on your heels, and you have to regroup and really rethink things.
Now, I'd say there's a couple data points there. If you remember, the survey during the feasibility study was 4,300 people, and almost 71% of those survey respondents said in the scale of what was the priority of this project, the highest point or the highest rating was high priority, and 71% said high priority. So there's that number. To Carrie's question, if you look at local examples, Fircrest passed on the first try. Bainbridge is a good example of what you're talking about. They failed. They went back. One of the points of feedback was it was too big. They shrunk it down a little bit. They went back to the voters again and failed the second time. And the voters the second time told them, it's just a pool. What about the things that you took out? You put them back in. They put them all back in, and then they passed. So, yeah, so there are examples that, you know, if that came to pass, I think that's when, you know, focusing in on what are the results, what are the feedback, what did voters tell us, and then adjusting based on that. But there are local examples of that. Sideview is another one that Jim mentioned, North Bend. So they went to the voters with I think it was about a $50 million facility proposal. They got something like 58.5%. So really close. Then they went back and they divided it in half. They said we'll do 2 phases, and one phase was about 25 million, and the second phase was going to be a similar size, and they got just about the same amount. So they're really close. I mean, mid 50s, high 50s. So they're really close, and I think their director and staff are trying to figure out, okay, what's the combination that is gonna help get this over the top? And so they're in the
Yeah,
process of trying to.
and I think probably short answer, it was related to COVID, because they had gone out and done a survey, and they had like, the survey response, they had like 70% approval, so they were pretty surprised. But they're projects that are like really popular. I mean, there's, gosh, I know there's at least 5 different aquatic centers that are being considered in eastern Washington, and then on the west side here, there's some projects too. So.
I have a request to open for public comment. So we have to vote first, hang on. So I have a request to open for public comment. So if you guys are open to that,
I would like to make a motion to open up the floor to public comment.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded to open the floor to public comment regarding this specific aquatic issue. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Jake, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, and we will open the floor to public comment.
So I'm Marty Zimmerman. I'm on the foundation. I wanted to address Krista's original question, which was timing of the bond, and I think you were asking if you decide on November and then change your mind, what would be the ramifications? So I'm just going to say, from the point of view of the foundation that's going to be running the Vote Yes campaign and fundraising, we would really like to know if the timing of the bond is going to change when we do what we do. So if you say that you are planning to run the bond in November, we're going to start. We've already started. We've already had our kickoff meeting. So we're ready. If it's in April, we're not going to move that fast. So as best as you can determine, like we understand it might need to change the date, but it'd be good to know that this board is serious about trying to run it in November. That's what we decided.
You are ready. You are ready.
Well, we are. I mean, we've been having meetings. We had our first meeting with our hired fundraiser. We're going to amass a group of volunteers and start dividing up the work. So we have a plan. We have our next meeting set.
So you have volunteers lined up that are just waiting for the whistle to blow, as it were?
We have people, we have supporters, and we're going after them to get them to volunteer for something. So people ask, what can we do? Okay, there's going to be a bond in November. This is what you can do.
And the fundraiser is for the capital campaign.
She will be.
Okay.
Right now she's also advising us, on just getting the message out. So the Vote Yes campaign, as well as the capital campaign, and then maybe crowd organization.
Any further questions for Marty? Okay, then I'll close the public comment. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions before I suggest a motion?
I'm a little concerned that we're going forward with this and we don't have an executive director.
Yeah, and I would say, if you look at that timeline here, can you scroll up a little bit so we can see January formatting? Yeah, oh no, you're there. So it seems like there's two, and Jim maybe comment, there's 2 buckets of activity that we need to launch on the side of the district. Creating this factual information campaign and launching that. So that's obviously a staff action. And then the voter information sessions that we'll do, those meetings out, Clinton Progressive Hall or CMA or Freedom Hall, wherever. That would be two of us, me and Eric, or whoever wants to participate is available to participate. So to me, that portion of it, Eric and I can take a lead on and take the logistic planning portion of that, I think. And I think then we can focus on how do we best support the staff in the factual information.
The staff does not have the capacity to take that.
Yeah, so like I said, how do we do that? Do we do it? Obviously, there's information that's flowing into that from D.A. Davidson, the math, the numbers, that table, the calculations, and then there's the factual information that's coming from ARC. So, sketch, what's inside. So to me, I think we can, and maybe that's another thing that Eric and I can take as the committee within, subcommittee within the board can take a lead on, is coordinating that work and pulling those things together.
Yeah, the voter factual sheet, right? I mean, we've got 2 templates, right? I mean, that you and I worked on.
We're also
So-
going to need a web page.
Yeah.
So there will be staff impact, but that needs to be minimized to.
Okay. So
I
a
agree.
specific webpage within our own site that is,
Yes.
okay. And so we would need to be looking to see if there is someone who can, perhaps within the skill set of the aquatic group, someone who has web design skills could be.
Any WordPress skills. So you create a tab in the district's website. So it'd be Aquatic Center, and then you would just start loading up information. Ideally, it's like
WordPress?
WordPress.
but like you'd have a tab in there from the architect where they could see a lot of the schematics. Yeah, it's a tough one. You raise a good point. But then on the other hand, I look at it as you could be doing these things, scheduling them, sort of teeing it up, and then hopefully by then your new manager would come on. But then the new manager can only do so much.
Yeah, and I feel like I need to be an advocate for whoever, hopefully, that we hire. And there's a serious onboarding process that needs to happen, plus orientation. And it is unfair to throw somebody into this without a huge amount of support in their first 3 months of a job. That is unfair.
And it's not just this, there's the campground. So there's a lot going on. I would say there's more in the works right now than I've seen in the last 16 years, all at once.
So I'm not saying no. I'm just saying that we need to understand this reality and perhaps incorporate more into the bond in terms of project management, in terms of just to be able to get it done. Because if we don't admit to these realities, all of this work for a whole lot of people is not going to pan out.
Well, I think, like, within our structure, the way we should surge to that is with this subcommittee that's me and Eric. So we have to step into the breach for that.
And we did talk about it, just so you're aware. I mean, it came up over and over again, and I know most recently, we talked about ARC taking some of those sub responsibilities. Correct, Carrie?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that was how that came about, was how do we relieve some of that workload?
Right. But we're also talking about maybe, or it was raised to maybe take a pause on ARC because payment. So I'll
and
vote
that-
yes,
well, and that helps,
but
right, and
these things need to be,
yeah, well, that helps, that would
Solved.
help us. Right? And the same way, like, talking about the campground, that, like, I think this is a unique situation. Obviously, it's the first time we've not had, we had one person doing the director job and a regular job, at the same time since I've been on the board, probably since you've been here. So same way, surging for the you guys are the campground subcommittee on the board, surging into that, picking up some of those things. I think we as a board, as a subcommittee structure, need to take another further step towards the staff to lift as much as we can. Because all these things, to me, the benefit to the public is too great. Like, we have to find a way to do it, because we have a window, I think a good window of opportunity to move forward with not just these, but the benefit from having the campground, the benefit from delivering this is too great for us to not find a way within, like I said, within our structure. We've got bandwidth, it's not unlimited, right? None of us, but to me, I think that's the only way there's no other way. Like, there's no way we can bring any kind of temporary help that's gonna not have to be onboarded for 3 months. And, I mean, maybe in limited cases like the idea of WordPress, dedicated support. So yeah, so maybe that's how we're doing it. We identify a specific task or some specific, task elements. I think that maybe that's how we also add to chip away at it. So that's good. I think it's good.
The pool committee, the steering committee, and staff, the board commissioners have already been doing a lot. I mean, there's no doubt that you all have been taking on a lot of work successfully, and its quality. It still nevertheless kind of trickles down to everything having to pass through the office, right? Everything is still needing to pass to the board. There's still a lot of, in spite of all your good work and effort and taking on a lot of things, which is, if we were doing those things, we would be really underwater. But it's maybe underground.
It's good to use a pool reference.
Yeah. But no matter what, there's an immense amount going on, and it still has to pass through staff. When I'm taking on some duties, it's trickling down that I'm not doing some of the things that I would have done for Sky, for instance, setting up registration as much. So, he's taking on extra as well. And one of the things that I addressed in a memo to you all is making sure that we have our boundaries clear with the joint pool committee in what they are permitted to authorize, what decisions they're allowed to make, and making sure that we're clear with them and also with ARC architects what decisions can be made by that committee and what needs to come to the board for approval. There's a lot of things that, where the locker room is going to go, that sort of thing that I don't think we need to discuss at this level. But if it's something like making a decision about the overall square footage, something that may increase the overall cost of the project by millions of dollars, that, in my perspectives needs to be run by the board before a final decision is made. And because that, they would be then directing ARC as to what the design is. And so, if that makes sense, I feel like we need to get some boundaries in place. That way, I'm not always kind of trying to do all the checks and balances. If it's a little bit clearer about what they are authorized to do, and how much they're authorized to speak on behalf of the district, then I can, let ARC know that, if we're coming up against this kind of a decision, then that needs to go by the board, and that's on the third Wednesday of each month for the most part.
So Matt, you're saying the price tag is roughly 26.4 million?
That's the estimate.
Okay. So whatever the board decides, then you should just stick to that. So like, as an example, if they came back and they go, oh, we realize you're in the voter education, but you know what, we forgot a cost of, now we're estimating 28 million. And so in the bond voter education world, that's, you've got information out there, you got your price tag and your estimated levy, and now you come back and try and explain it. So I've been in meetings too where there's an architect and I have to rain on parade because they're designing something that actually exceeds the legal debt limit. And I have to say, sorry, there's a ceiling there. So I think that'd be one suggestion, is you just,
That's a great idea.
once you know that number and you all feel comfortable, then you make it clear to them, this is it, it's 26.4 million. And related to that, not to sound like a used car salesman, but it will garner more support if you have a little more exact number versus saying a round number like 27 million. If you come back and say, well, this, it's 26,495,000, that, the risk sound like a used car salesman, that seems to kind of have more credibility. Like, oh, okay, you really sharpened your pencil, you really kind of drilled down on that number.
And that could be, and I think it'd be reasonable to do, we could do another motion with that kind of outer limit, because I think we have a good idea of what the estimate is from these two different studies, two separate entities, and then that could feed back to Carrie's question as guidance, formal board guidance to the architect.
Like a not to exceed motion.
Yeah, not to exceed 27 million, for example, or 26, 9,
Yeah,
95. Right, but just as a way to get to Carrie's point, something like that, a major waypoint decision should come from the board.
Related to that would be the owner's costs, such as these surveys. Whether they can, I would think that these sort of costs need to come to the board first. If it, $1,000, that's one thing. But if it's over our certain purchasing limits that we already have in place, then I would say that those still need to come by the board in our usual way, as far as it's a bid level. We have one option to kind of work around that for these two surveys to keep things moving, but in general.
So they list within the, ARC is the prime architectural design contractor essentially, and there's a number of subcontractors to them, including David O. Engineering, who's doing the site surveys and septic, and they have a building consultant who's doing the building part. They have an aquatic consultant, ADG, who participated in the feasibility study, who's doing the aquatics. So they have this structure, and we've contracted with them to be the prime and to select those subcontractors and bill them and deal with invoices. There's also this bucket of things that they call owner's costs. So things that they expect us to pay for outside of their scope. And one of the things is this topographical survey. And from understanding they've explained to us, normally we would come into the project with that thing already done. $50,000, $100,000 survey saying, okay, here's the site, we've already surveyed it, here's the survey now, architect. And we don't have that yet. So there's that survey, and then there's another survey associated with the beginning of a project called the geotech survey, which is like the water table and other such things. Normally, they ask us to do those things separately, and they don't like to incur the risk of them. But one of the proposals that we're going to have here that Carrie put out is that we give it to them and they manage it just like they're managing all the other subcontract activities. They take the risk and then they charge us something like 9%, 10%.
10%.
To do that. We ask them to forecast what other things are out there beyond the launch that you would consider in the owner category. And they told us about 2 different things that they know about. One is a traffic study that they expect us to do. We just did one for the campground, so that's something we're familiar with. It comes later in the project. It would come in the fall or sometime like that. And then the other
Hydrology?
one, there was another one that's hydrology, which both of those were in the range of like $10,000. So the most significant costs are associated with these surveys at the launch of the project, Topo and Geotech. So the idea is that this proposal is that we would let ARC manage those so that it unloads the staff, to Eric's point, and then those other ones that come down the pipe, we will treat as we would normally treat. They would come to us as the owner. We would consider them at the board level, debate, discuss, approve, disapprove, whatever. So we would just, for the purposes of these launch studies, we would take this action or propose this action that ARC deal with it. And we pay them that 10% fee to deal with it just like they're dealing with the other, it's within the same structure. We're asking them to deal with the aquatic design subcontractor, and we would ask them to do this work in the same way. So.
And our contract with ARC was reviewed by Pacifica Law Group. And so I gave them a call yesterday, just saying, hey, we're considering this addendum to that contract. And so I was going to send it to him after our discussions here, just to review it as he did the others to make sure everything's all good. But he said it seemed in line with the contract with ARC, which we have them working with certain subcontractors, and so he said it seemed consistent with the rest of the contract. It didn't seem like it would probably be a problem, but he hadn't looked at it yet.
And because they assumed these as owner's costs, they were not included in the original.
Yes, correct.
And so we don't actually have any money allocated.
Right, so but what we did in the last meeting is we approved spending up to completing the schematic design. And the schematic design estimate from ARC was something like $297K.
Okay.
That left us with just around $100,000 in additional money for things like this. And we were trying to get an estimate of what those were. At the time, we didn't have the quotes.
Okay.
Now, what are the 2 quotes are?
Okay.
Estimates.
One was
39,000.
39
11,000
and 11.
and
50 grand.
Yeah.
And
so
then they're 10% marked up, so
55.
55.
So looks like we have the bandwidth, because the initial quote for the topographic survey was higher than that. It was 70 or something like that. 65. So that coming back down, they took out one big chunk of it. That gives us, I think, the bandwidth to do it, pending the Department of Commerce turning the switch for us. But that work is hopefully now finally in place. Jen signed the working papers for Department of Commerce, and the legislature has what we had to request as a scope change for the original legislative submittal document that was submitted last year. Anyway, the hope is that happens quickly, and we're on this 90 term, so the hope is that all dovetails together and that we can funds will be available to pay on the 90-day terms.
I just want everybody to be, I don't know what's entailed with it, but I just want everybody to be aware of the timeline of July 19th meeting. July 21st, Art Director files the ballot title and resolution with the County Auditor. Then the next day is the tryout one, for some director that's going to be here for the very first time.
Quarterly test.
Yeah. So maybe do it in June.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no problem with doing it early, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, or you could wait until July 25th or 30th.
Okay, good.
But just don't forget.
Let's make that
Well,
time.
that's what I'm thinking, sooner would be better.
Yeah, let's put that on the June agenda to at least talk about it.
No, I think seeing it now and talking about it now is the only way that it gets on the June agenda, right? Because we'll figure that out in May, it's probably not. Okay? Any other questions before I make a motion? Okay. So I'll make first motion to, that we,
Are you writing this down?
I wrote it down here, that we coordinate with the staff and the foundation for voter information and education to launch in support of a bond measure on the November 2023 ballot.
All right, so we do Robert's rules in reverse here. We have all of our conversation and then we make a motion, which is not the true Robert's rules way to do it.
Right.
This feels like a sufficiently important decision. So thank you, Matt, for taking the time to actually write your motion. Now we need to discuss it. We're not going to do our usual immediate second, okay? So we need to have some sort of discussion here to finalize that, make any tweaks. Agreed?
Mm. That's what I wanted to say.
I know, I've already spoken too.
Done.
So.
It's true, we do everything backwards. So we could probably tighten that up a little bit, tighten
Okay.
up the language a little
Go
bit.
for it.
Maybe she would appreciate that.
Go for it.
Does
All
that
right,
count?
That's my little chicken scratch.
So, a motion to,
We're just saying move
to
forward.
launch with the voter information campaign.
And I did to try to distinguish between voter information, which is us, and voter education, which is
Gotcha.
voting as campaign.
So a motion to begin the campaign.
Yeah. I'll gladly see the Florida year revised, tightened up motion, and no pride of authorship. I clearly not.
This is when you're supposed to talk amongst yourselves.
We are.
Yeah.
We just finished.
We are.
We're revising the motion to make it a little bit easier.
Bless you.
Okay. So this is just specifically authorizing or starting the campaign.
Yes.
And then the other one is for a bond?
We'll do that. I'll propose that separately.
Okay, so this is just for the campaign.
Yeah, it's an intention to be on the November ballot and to launch the activity
Okay.
to get there.
Okay. So the only discussion we had was to try to change the language. Does that count? Is that enough?
Part of it was people felt.
So I'll retract my motion. the floor to Krista.
A motion to begin the campaign of voter information and education in support of the proposed aquatic facility on the November 2023 ballot. Does that read a little
Yes.
better?
I think it does.
Yeah? Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
But she needs to, okay.
I'll second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to begin the campaign of voter information and education in support of the proposed aquatic facility on the November 2023 ballot. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, I.
Jake,
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Okay, so now I'll propose a second motion to establish for ARC a maximum facility construction budget amount of $27 million. Do something.
I'll second that.
You want me to read? Pass it down? Okay.
I'm willing to wing things with some things, but not this.
No, no.
Just out of curiosity, is there any sort of publication that's like voter psychology?
Well, this isn't the final, this is just the.
Yeah.
The gas
No,
companies
no, no,
have
I'm
been doing
just
it to us
curious.
for
I'm
years.
curious about the psyche of voters.
Yeah, it's a question for professional elections, so, yeah.
Sorry, my handwriting is not that great.
So we had talked earlier about there being a not to exceed.
You can break that.
Do you want that in there?
Yes, yes, you can add. I rescind my motion language and Eric has the floor.
I would like to make a motion to, move to establish, for ARC architects, a maximum total contribution cost not to exceed, construction cost not to exceed $27 million.
Second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to establish for ARC architects a maximum total construction cost not to exceed $27 million. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, I.
Jake,
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
You have the memo for the survey?
Yeah, so kind of got out of order a little bit though, so let me go over that.
Do we feel that we have everything we need from Jim so that he can make his way
Yes.
down to the other
Yes.
side?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very exciting.
Very,
Congratulations.
very helpful.
Yeah. Well, we'll be in touch.
Thank you,
If
Jeff.
you have any
you.
questions, yeah,
Thank you.
just get my water. Have a good night.
All right.
See ya.
Don't see suits very often. Get off.
Oh, we can now hopefully pull up the surveys, then get to a motion on the survey.
Let me, let's let's back up a little bit to the memo. That's part of that. I'll have to go over the whole thing, but yeah, this one.
Yeah, she's back.
Yeah, I know. We didn't have water. Okay, so comprehensive plan program. So Matt already touched on where we're at on the Department of Commerce reimbursement.
And one additional point I'll make is I reached out to Representative Paul, who's the sponsor, just to ask for his help to get that scope change through expeditiously. And I told him that the project timeline was at risk. So hopefully that's quick. So he expressed that he would do the best he could.
I just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer for getting that deed of trust rounded up so quickly, and Matt for working on all of those documents to get that squared away. I really appreciate it. In the memo, I just mentioned that we were a little concerned about the funding for paying ARC and that not being reimbursed, so we addressed that a bit here. And of course, I had put out the hope that we would pause, but I think if at this point, if we pause, if we're moving towards a November ballot, you wouldn't have, without ARC's work, you wouldn't have as much to deliver the information campaign. So, I would say, you know, we talked about kind of the workload going on, and I've tried to think about. This is essentially doing two jobs right now, and one of them being, you know, the executive director position right now would be very full as it is. Perhaps you guys could help by allowing me to outsource some items that are coming up right now, that are big items that we don't want to mess up, especially with our bond ratings and things like that. We could pay our CPA to do more than the financial statement compilation. That's a small, not small. It's a big project, but it's that's the limit of what they're doing is kind of summarizing our financial compilation. We could ask them to also file our annual report, to prepare and file our annual report to
Secretary of State.
State Auditor.
When is that due?
It is due, I believe it's May 30th, somewhere around. That would come at a pretty significant cost. I had actually priced that out with them to see what that would be. And I can't remember because I did that several months ago and it was too expensive after we'd already established the budget to decide to throw that in as well. But we're probably talking another $10,000 to $20,000.
And realize that we are obviously not paying a director's salary during this period, so this is, to me, is within that bandwidth.
And one thing that I discussed with Jim was there's a little disconnect between us being on cash basis and our financial statements have been prepared on an accrual basis. And that's one thing that he's looking at to see if that's going to be problematic. It's been that way for years, but I was new and I why are we doing things this way? And so I had inquired about switching the financial statements to match what we're actually doing, which would be cash basis. And that is, I ruled that out again because the cost was be the first time doing the work again.
So based upon what I heard Jim say, isn't it to our credit rating benefit to be on an accrual basis? But the caveat was, if you're gonna stick with a cash basis, then these are some additional things that you need to have prepared. So have you considered
Yeah,
that?
you mean like switching
So-
to accrual basis?
That compared to that in juxtaposition to defending our stance of being on a cash basis for that particular presentation.
Mhm. Right. Well, and what he's looking at for me is the problem. I'm fine with continuing it as we are doing it if it's not a problem. The bank said it gives them a better picture of our organization. So for loan financing, to have a accrual-based financial statements. But they thought it was strange, of course, that we're doing one thing and reporting it differently. So he's going to find out if that's a problem.
Okay.
So that we may have to change that.
You think that's an additional 5K?
Yeah, maybe I should go check my email.
That's fine.
But yeah, over what we budgeted for this year.
Yeah,
That's
beyond
just
beyond
the
the current,
switching.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then if we also want to have them prepared. So
Okay.
that is a thought, that is something that is weighing on me, and it's going to be a lot of work to do. It still will be some work because I have to provide them information, but it would help.
I'm just as we're talking here, I'd be willing to make a motion to support that.
So is there anything else? Or should we do
What
it
else?
individually?
Well, so the other,
What
I
else?
mean, this other one is the ARC.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I tried to think of other things that would help us, if we outsource payroll. I'm not knowing enough about accounting and how we would merge those. It might end up being more work to do the change for a short term.
So are you using QuickBooks for payroll, or what are you using?
We use something called Account Edge. Yeah, that's a change there. Challenging.
And so that would be a matter of finding a savvy bookkeeper. I mean, I have.
For the payroll part?
Correct.
Oh, it would still be the
Well,
CPA, right?
Oh, would it?
No,
No.
That doesn't
Just
seem like a
great
good
payroll
use of funds.
services that would do that. Like, I know senior services did that in the last year, where they outsourced to somebody that specifically just handles payroll. That's the only thing. Not
Right.
accounts.
Well, I have 3 people in my head that I can call who would most likely tell me yes.
Yeah,
So I want to understand.
but they have to
What the
be
specificity
familiar,
is in
yeah,
Account
with
Edge.
that particular software. I think that's
I would
the,
imagine. I don't know how you merge the two when you have it outsourced. You know what I mean?
I don't understand what you're trying to say. What would be merged?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be doing transactions, right? Accounts will be, credited or debited. Payroll taxes would be paid. And so you have to take that information and put it into our own system, I assume.
Yeah, you're going to have to make the journal entries.
Right. So,
Right, so they would just give you the numbers. You get a spreadsheet report, and then you would make the journal entries based upon that report, and you've been doing the payroll long enough that you would know whether or not the numbers are correct.
Sorry, I don't know. I assume what you're stating is correct as far as how.
Because you're not going to let that third party behind our curtain to our accounting software. You're just giving them this processing section.
Yeah. So for a short-term solution, I'm not sure that that's the best. You know what I mean? If it's just something that we're doing until we get a director on board.
So
It
so
would
we
be
can
nice
do
to
it
take a
like,
day off once in a while.
so say we have like submitted hours
So in terms of taking some action tonight, but even though we don't necessarily have this exactly worked out, can we do some sort of a motion with the looking for immediate ways to outsource some functions? Maybe we set some sort of dollar amount, like within this, so that we can authorize this going forward.
Yeah, it's an authorization not to exceed.
Right, because otherwise, then I think my response is, we need to figure out how to do this, get the cost, and bring it back at the next meeting for approval, which will be
Yeah,
on the way.
that's too long to
So
kick
that's
the
too
can
long
down
to
the road
wait.
to help carry.
Right,
it.
exactly, we wanna get this stuff off,
Yeah, so
moved
we-
aside, so does that make sense in terms of how
it
to
does.
go forward with this?
Yeah,
And so
we
then, in my
authorize-
head, that falls within how we did the delegation of duties, then that would be the three of you, Matt,
Right,
Krista,
so
and Carrie, right?
as we figure this out, we can
Yeah,
approve, check off whatever within.
Yeah, so I think, not
yeah,
to
maybe
exceed.
not to exceed, I'm just gonna look for our policy.
Yeah, thank you, I was like, so what's our limit, Carrie?
And are we looking at specifically financial,
So we need a motion.
Um,
are both
so I
of
think-
your
I think it's going to be-
combined asks related to financial?
No, he is not asking anything.
Okay,
I mean, this does not represent an ask of him.
okay.
This is just me.
And it looks
So-
like it's up to 20,000.
This was just something that I realized would help us, up to 20,000. Okay. And
Okay.
well, that would probably at least help with the CPA part. You know, there was other things I wanted them to help us with.
How about up to 25?
Within our,
It's gotta be within our comp.
Under-
Oh, gotcha.
Well, professional
Doesn't it?
services, that was highlighted because of the
That has to do with the
Yes,
ARC
so-
stuff.
purchase services. Would probably be it, which is also about 50,000.
to me, so how about we do it this way? You do a not to exceed authorization up to that level, and then we just have it as an agenda item for every month going forward until we have the director in place. And we revisit if we need to do another motion for the ensuing period, and I don't think it's gonna be.
For an additional
Yeah, I don't
whatever
think in 30
amount?
I don't think
Okay.
in 30 days we're gonna exceed
See,
20K,
okay,
right?
got it.
So, keeping it broad enough that you're
You said-
going to be able to
yeah,
make the
we
decision
s-
about what to do with the CPA for the annual
Yeah.
report, whether or not we're going to change our reporting to a cash basis, looking into outsourcing payroll, so that we don't have to.
Right, so if you scroll back up, what do we title it? What do we call it? Officially, not professionals, not.
Yeah, go back up to 1.3, or down to 1.3.
Purchase services. So we would
Personal
Purchase.
purchase
Yeah, purchase
services. So I would say
okay.
we title it that. We just say purchase services at the discretion of staff. The not to exceed value.
Staff or business manager?
Business
Business
manager.
sure, sure.
Because God only knows how many jelly beans you would buy if we gave.
Listen, they've got 10%.
Okay, how's
This
this?
is a more
Um,
different.
I move to authorize our business manager to purchase financial services, to temporarily purchase financial services in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Okay, so I'm looking for a word in there that would say something about an aggregate or an individual, right? I mean, so is her entire bucket 20,000?
Not
Or
to
does she-
exceed a total spend, a total,
Isn't that saying that though?
I think-
Well,
understand
but
the
we've
aim of
already
it.
said that just the
The
CPA
sum.
thing alone could be
Right.
10 to 20,000.
not to exceed the sum.
So then we haven't even talked about whether or not we want to change the reporting to a cash basis or the payroll software or whatever else is on our list that we haven't discussed. So are we saying that all of that can only be 20,000,
Well,
or are
but-
we saying that an individual event could only be 20,000? Did I articulate that
Right.
better?
You did.
Okay.
That's why I was asking if we should motion or make approve the 20,000 for the CPA, because that was something.
Yeah,
Oh,
you said
as its
that-
own?
As its own,
And
that's
that
why I
wraps
said
up
that.
several items.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then that would free up Carrie to do other things under this guise. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
From,
So there would be two motions.
Yeah.
One specifically for the CPA for the annual report.
Of just the services
Yes.
of our
of our
current
CPA, okay.
And to expand their services or something like that, you know what I mean, to expand. Because we have a contract.
To
in place with them
expand
already.
their deliverables.
And then there would be a second motion
in
for everything else that you would like to consider outsourcing, correct?
term in an amount not to exceed 20 for the CPA.
That, the payroll idea I'd like to explore, but I don't think that I would be ready to do anything before the next board meeting. So we're at that point, if we want
So you
to-
can investigate then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to have your contacts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move to authorize our business manager to instruct to engage our current CPA to expand their deliverables in an amount not to exceed $20,000. To engage.
I'll second that one.
This goes there. Messy, but.
It has been moved and seconded to authorize our business manager to engage our current CPA to expand their deliverables in an amount not to exceed $20,000. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, I.
Krista, I.
Jacob.
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
I just want to make sure okay, so not to exceed 20,000 beyond what we're already on.
Yes.
Yeah, because she's saying expand the
That's temporary.
and, yeah.
That was mentioned.
Are we gonna do it? We gonna do the surveys too while we're still on
Okay. Yeah.
Can wrap that up.
Oh, we didn't do that.
Yeah, I think we covered most of it. You probably, I'll go and read it.
Oh, but I just meant that, the specific topic, the last motion I think we need associated with the aquatic center is to move the geotech survey and the topographical survey under the ARC responsibility.
Yeah, so if we do not do that, then we need to put the topographical survey out to bid. So, which at first was my inclination to keep things on, target with our policies and stuff, but like the lawyer said, it's in line with what we've asked of ARC. It's certainly more expedient, and they can direct it.
So,
The only thing that I had a challenge with, Carrie, when I printed out this information is that what happened here? Why are there these arrows and these sorts of things, and why does it look like me?
Yeah, but
Is
I
that
was
how
having
it
trouble
looks to
with
you, or?
printing things as well. That is not what it looked like. Can you pull that up? Did it look like that when you looked at it?
It did as well.
Oh. So that is,
That had to do with,
non-construction costs.
Mhm.
That's what it's supposed to look like. Is that the one? Maybe I can.
Yeah, but that's not at all what it, and you're pulling that right up off of our hyperlink as well?
Off of the website. Yeah, I'll let them know, because I had trouble, I would be able to see it as this, but when I would try to print things, this guy had to do some magic.
So did you have to flatten their PDF or something?
I have no idea. I have Acrobat reader, so it's like the Acrobat Pro, so it might just, that's what I needed, it might just.
Yeah,
Those notes in there.
I'll let them know that there's a problem.
That's right now, it's.
That would be great if we could just walk away from hard copy.
Let me see if I can print this.
Okay.
Okay, so I think vaguely have an idea of where
Okay.
we are, so we're working
Yeah.
on a motion
I've got
to
one.
do the ARC addendum for the 10%.
Yeah, so my motion would be to make ARC Architects responsible for required topographical, geotechnical, and hydrology surveys associated with the aquatic wellness center, pending final review by district legal resources.
Specific water.
I'll second that motion.
I don't think hydrology is necessarily on the table.
It's not.
As far as, it's not part of the amendment, so I guess I would say,
Okay,
can we approve the amendment that they provided?
Again, I just see that in the SD phase, there's the potential for those three. And SD is the phase we're in, because some may be deferred into DD, but I would say the last thing we want to do is have to revisit that and have them stop, because the supplemental hydrology report on the geotech survey, they're not authorized to do. So my motion is to
Oh,
approve.
okay, so, sorry, so this is what you're looking at.
Yeah, topographic,
Okay.
geotechnical, and hydraulic.
Okay, and that stays within the,
They didn't approve it, ARC said they would.
Yeah, which is the SD phase, which is,
Right, he says some may be deferred, and that's okay, if it doesn't, it's not required, that's fine. The idea is though, if it is required in the SD phase, which we have already approved for them, that they be under our responsibility.
Okay, so what they provided was the amendment only to include, amendment to the contract, only to include those two items. Those other, and it, spells out how much that would be. They did mention that perhaps the hydrology could be brought in, but they don't really have costs on it yet.
That's what I thought at the last meeting, that's why I just asked you that question.
So I would say, I don't think we would need the hydrology in the next month.
Yeah, again, it's part of the, potentially in the SD, I'm saying the motion is to shift the responsibility for that to them whenever it comes. Beyond that,
just being done with
it's
it.
still our responsibility, so I see traffic study later, there may be other things later, so.
So you're suggesting even if it wasn't on their agenda, that we try to put it on their agenda?
Well, but they've listed it in the box that's called, they are needed during SD phase.
I know
They're
that.
not needed right now.
Yeah,
So the ones that are needed right now, the topographical is like the number one priority, we're already late. The geotech is the one right behind that. Hydrology is sometime later.
Right.
But I'm just saying fundamentally, we move that to their responsibility so we don't have, the staff doesn't have to deal with it. For the cost of that, it's gonna be $1,000 fee, I think.
10,000.
No, but we're paying our $1,000.
Right,
Take
the
that
10%.
responsibility.
Yeah,
Right,
10%.
right.
So
Gotcha.
I think
So, yeah, okay.
my motion stands to include that.
Okay, so I hear you, and I see what it says there, but then I'm also seeing what they actually wrote on the amendment that we're going to sign. And to Carrie's point, it's not on here. So I'm not quite sure how we balance that.
Yeah, I'm just saying the motion stands, and then we sign that because it's within the terms of the motion. In fact, if that's not on there yet, maybe next month they show up with the sheet that's got hydrology on it, or maybe it's the month after. And we don't have to business manager can sign for that because we've already approved that being in their purview.
Okay.
Again, it's just moving it from the staff to ARC. Whether it happens today.
So if they send us another amendment, we've
with
already
hydrology on
approved
it,
it.
we've already approved it. If it doesn't come until,
Should there be something on there regarding to the proposed cost?
well, we could say phase, we could say, within the schematic design phase. So if it gets pushed into a future phase, then it's not covered.
Well, I'm also just thinking, like, I'm fine if it's 10K, but if they come back and it's like, it's 20K, like, I'd like to know.
Sure.
Before, you know what I mean, like,
Sure, it's a good point. So we just put it under, and we could just do a not to exceed. Make it a not to exceed 15K or something like that. Whatever threshold you want to set.
So can we, would you guys just approve the amendment to the contract? And also, future amendment to include the hydrology not to exceed. So I feel like it should be separated, two things. Because this is a very clear document.
Yeah,
Does the amendment have a reference, like a reference number or something like that?
It does.
It's G802-2017, seems current.
Oh, no, wait a minute, let's see. Amendment number 1. Do you recognize this reference at all as anything from like our original contract or anything?
It's B101-2017. Yeah, so that is their nomenclature. And maybe this is also amendment number 001.
So, yeah, it might not hurt to reference document number, amendment number 001. Depending upon how they.
Okay, so we can do this as 2. I can revise that to say 1, approve the amendment as proposed, and then 2, to shift responsibility for the hydrology survey to ARC.
in an amount not to exceed, we can give them a little leeway, you know?
12.5.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve AIA document G802-2017.
Is anybody writing this down?
I'll just add it back to you.
Okay, approved document number G802-2017, amendment number 001. Okay.
Looking for a second. I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve Yeah, so what is AIA? Is that, because I thought it was ARC, so what's
You know, I
AIA?
think AIA looks like it's maybe someone who provides reference.
The American Institute of Architects, it's on the bottom of that page.
Just
Yeah, it shows
document.
it's like a form.
The G02 2017.
Approve of the services agreement.
Is sufficient, right?
That G8022017, it matches the nomenclature on the main contract.
Okay.
So amendment to general services.
Amendment 001.
Are you and I on the same page, Karen?
I call out ARC amendment. Attached to the contract with ARC. Oh, there it is, okay.
Everybody? It has been moved and seconded to approve document G802-2017, amendment to professional services agreement 001 with ARC Architects. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, I.
Jake,
Aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion passes.
Okay.
All right, so
So I'll make a motion to make ARC Architect responsible for required hydrology surveys associated with the schematic design of the Aquatic Wellness Center, not to exceed $12,500, and pending final review by district legal resources.
I'll second that motion.
Is there a responsible for required hydrology surveys associated with the aquatic? Not to exceed $12,500, pending final review.
Required hydrology surveys associated with
the schematic design of the aquatic wellness center. Not to exceed $12,500.
and
pending final review by district legal resources. Because we're all into
and that's true, this one also will be run by them.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to make ARC Architects responsible for required hydrology surveys associated with the schematic design phase the Aquatic Wellness Center, not to exceed $12,500, pending final review by legal resources. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Mr. I.
Jake, aye?
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion passes.
Alright. Not a campground.
Actually, can we skip to the amphitheater?
It says, oh,
Do we have to go in
that's
this
bizarre.
order?
Well, we haven't so far.
Well, it just,
Normally, we would
so,
probably for the bring it.
okay,
No.
okay, I can make this very quick. The campground, so, we have, let's see, after the ZCI, review, it has been approved. The Island County has said that we can put a campground on our park. Yeah, next steps, the site plan review still needs to be completed. But the assistant director, Jonathan Lang, has already been kind of CC'd in that, so, I'll just keep on keeping on
Also,
pushing
it's
this.
the site plan, and I'm sorry for the ignorance, it's the site plan review, sit at the county and they've got.
Yes,
approved
yes,
it.
yes, that's what, I believe, if I understand this correctly, that's what we've been waiting on all this time. And they keep, bringing up another thing and another thing and another thing. What we need is the site plan review, that's the final, and that is sitting with the county, but I believe they're pretty clear on our urgency. Yeah. So that's the campground update. Yes,
And
I
I-
will start to do
I love that they,
that. Originally, she was CC, and I couldn't put,
Right,
yes,
I get that.
apologies but that's why, so.
I would say I read the yays and nays letters, about the campground proposal, that was interesting.
yeah, I just printed it off tonight, so I flipped through it very quickly and didn't do a bunch of reading. Was there anything that gave you?
Well, I think people have legitimate concerns, but I also think they can be addressed, security, I have some questions about management, the things that we'll have to look into in the future. I'm thinking campground host, cleanup, just a variety of things that are coming down the path.
Yeah, it was contingent on there being a host, there being, regular patrols, but those were all, things that were in the original plan. So, and that's what I assured, the county on. I also assured them that there's gonna be, there's a stay limit, I believe, in what the county sent back, like people can stay for 7 days in a 30-day period, which makes sense to me. But, my response to them was, we're looking to provide recreation, not housing, so,
Yeah, that's tighter than the state park guidelines. I think it's 10 days consecutive and no more than.
2 days and 30 day period.
30.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
which, given the size and scope of what we're looking to do, I think that's a reasonable.
Sure.
So.
So do we have just any kind of say we're making progress and the county finishes the site plan review in the next couple of months, like any idea, okay, this one, any idea what our, like, if we just have to put a flag in a month and a year, when we think we'd have, 6 sites on the ground, is it?
So I think,
2023?
probably at some point soon, to your point, we should probably have a meeting with Tom and figure out like, when we get this site plan review, what are the next immediate steps? And,
Yeah, because we'll start, because I don't get asked about it every day or every week, but I've probably been asked 10 times in the last 6 months, just about, like, hey, it sounds great, blah, blah, blah. I just pushed it to the county. But having our own little, maybe make a flyer or make kind of something to pin up around places and put on social media. Because I think people get excited about it.
once
I
we
think they would too.
get past this
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Now
but,
start having meetings with
we are,
counties.
yes, we are due for a campground committee meeting. Yes, I will put that on my list to coordinate with you and Tom.
So one thing that we needed to do is reach out to Allison at the RCO and give her an update and see if we can get an extension on our grant funds. Saying this is where we're at. So I need to read those documents and see where we are at. Because I think no matter what, I think we should try to get whatever the extra extension is.
Yes, if we
I
can.
thought we
I
already
don't
were
see how
on our,
Tom could-
I thought we already were on our extension.
We are on our last one, but there was a possibility of getting
Okay,
some
that we can
director
say, hey,
approval.
we aren't the ones dragging our feet.
Yes.
If you want to update her, that would be true.
And if you want, I can reach out to her. Do you have if you want me to take that off your plate? Either way. Do you have the latest waiver approval in an email from her to Doug? Like our current our extension, our current extension.
I can dig it out.
Yeah,
I have the email where she stated that there was a possibility.
Okay, so maybe.
Yeah, just to continue that conversation thread so that Allison doesn't have
Just
to
so
sit
she knows we're moving along
Yes.
and, what do we need to do to.
Okay.
Okay, Eric and I are fading fast.
I'm fully attentive and ready to go.
Theater.
So,
Okay, amphitheater. Okay, so I had an email exchange with Jan Mark. I don't know how to say his last name.
Jean-Marc Schwartz.
Schwartz. Okay, is that you?
Yeah.
oh, you've been
Hi.
waiting all this time.
Great.
God bless you.
If we can, going forward, when we have guests, if we can evaluate our agenda and perhaps reorder it so that somebody is not kept waiting for how many hours?
3 hours.
We are so sorry that
Oh,
you
wait.
got caught.
Our clock's off.
Yeah.
Our very intensive meeting. Can we make a motion? May I make a motion to open the public comment?
I'll second the motion.
Can we do that?
Is there anything more to say than what we did in our email exchange?
Yeah.
It has been moved and seconded to open for public comment regarding the amphitheater. All those in favor?
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Jake, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes and we are open for public comment.
All right, thank you. And once again, for the record, my name is Jean-Marc Schwartz. I'm representing the Rotary Club of South Whidbey. island, and we have been holding on to $15,000 for this amphitheater project for 6 years now. And, you know, we've been working through this, and a lot of our members are at the point where there's a lot of need in our community, and they think that they don't see an end point here. Even though the grants were applied for, you know, we didn't rack well enough to have a grant. I know the legislature is still in the process of making the final list. We understand that, and we're willing to wait until that happens. But one of our concerns is that the one grant for the Land and Water Conservation Fund was for, I think, $250,000. And that, along with our $15,000 and some funds in kind, were going to be the matching funds for the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Fund. So what we're looking at, and maybe we can clear this up for me, is that, I mean, you're counting on one grant to pay for 50% of the other grants. So really what we need is 2 grants. And we didn't score well enough on either one. So work was done by Doug last year, and you know, even year, and we'll find out this year an odd year, and if we don't get it, now we're looking at 24, and maybe getting funding in 25. And frankly, we're approaching almost 10 years at that point that our club has been holding on to $15,000 that frankly, put a lot of other things, a lot of other need in our community. We're not going to use it for any club expenses, of course. I mean, there's homeless issues, there's other issues that we want to address, and we will be able to. And I think we've been very sincere, and frankly, I've been one of your strongest supporters in trying to hold on to this fund for as long as we have, because we made a commitment. But, you know, now, you know, we're talking about a pool of $27 million that a lot of effort is going to go into. I'm frankly questioning, you know, whether or not Parks and Recreation District is going to really push this forward, and you know, whether or not we need to just move on. Thanks.
To the point of the way the grant match works is all the programs that we have access to through the Recreation Conservation Office program all require, not all, but the ones that we typically compete for require 50% match. So if this project costs $300,000, we ask for a $150,000 or a $300,000 grant, we have to provide $150,000. So when a district like us doesn't have the capital reserve to match with our own funds, they allow a grant for grant match. So in this case, and our hope was that we would float above the line for funding from both of these grants. The feedback that we get that says we're at the line or below the line, the way it typically works is they roll down from the top to the bottom, and they request matching funds certification from each of the potential grantees. So number one, here's your funding and certify that you have the matching funds available, and you typically have 6 months to provide the matching funds. And if the grantee is not able to provide those, then the funding that was allocated to them rolls down below. And we've had several situations in the past where we've been at or close to the line, and as those higher ranking projects were not able to meet the match requirements, then funding is available where it wasn't projected to be. So my personal hope is that that's how it goes. Anyway, just to answer that particular question.
But just to clarify, if the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Fund says, yeah, you're good, if you can come up with matching funds, again,
yes,
we did get 215 from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and we were, I think, lower on that. So in all likelihood, we're not going to get that money, even if the WWRF comes through for us.
Right. So in the case of, in that particular case, that was one of the examples of a higher ranking project that might not be able to match. I would just say in the past 4 years, when we have had the opportunity for those kinds of things, that we've you know, if we were the, you know, successful with one of the grant programs and not the other, that we would take that as a special case. We would probably have an executive board meetings, you know, a ad hoc, out of cycle board meeting to try to figure out how we could come up with the matching funds in some other way. Because otherwise those funds would, you know, be passed to somebody else. So just my own personal opinion, that if we were successful on one, we would react and again, dig as deep as we possibly could to find matching funds. And we have, again, we've referenced her name a couple times. We have a representative at RCO who, if we have a path to the matching funds, even if we can't meet the exact timeline, but we say we have these funds from this source, these funds from this other source, and we have, you know, we're working to pull these other funds together, they'll typically extend the timeline for us in order to pull those additional funds. So we have some, like to me, I think, again, we would react quickly to that opportunity.
Well, that's good, because I can pass that back, because we had concerns, you know, going over two and having one dependent on the other, but that's good to know. So, do you know when?
Well, so the state, you know, the capital budgeting process is happening right as we speak. We were talking to our representative Paul today about, and they're in those negotiations. Typically, they come out. It comes out about now, early March.
Yeah, end of March.
Maybe. So, and I think RCO is pretty quick to respond. After that, the money will roll down to them, and then they do their ranking. So, what I think that the signal last year was all three of our District 10 legislators issued a press release on the same day. Senator Mazzal, Representative Paul, and at the time Representative Gilday. I would expect we would see a press release from all three. You know, here's the capital budget, here's what District 10, these are the projects that impact District 10. Within days or a week or two of that, we'll have the feedback from RCO, I would guess. And we'll reach out to them when that happens. So that'll be the signal in the press that we close to.
Okay, and we've committed to waiting until the legislative process is complete, and we know whether or not we're above the line or below the line.
And it's quick. It's 2023 money, so it's money that.
Yeah, and if we come above the line and we get a commitment from the board that you're going to find the matching funds, even though they didn't come through the other grant, we're going to stick with you. My question now to the board is: are you in a position, if you do not get this the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Grant done for the year, are you going to continue to push for an amphitheater with everything else that you've done on the plate right now?
I would say I would just personally reserve judgment on that until that day comes. It's in our comprehensive plan. It's in the list of capital projects, so it's in our plan. It's not outside the plan. So it's in a.
But you understand that we can't just hold on to $15,000 indefinitely. I mean, our entire foundation fund is less than $50,000. It's a really significant portion that can do some good in other places. Now, we don't want to hang you out to dry either. I mean, if you're counting on us, but is it fair to say that if we were to withdraw, because I mean, we've been full faith up to this point, but if we were to withdraw at this point, would you be able to find another partner?
Yeah, I mean.
We don't.
Yeah, I think, and I think maybe to me, it's going to be, we'll have a clear, the situation will be clear as soon as the legislative process ends, which is probably by the time we have our next meeting. And I think at that point, we'll know if it's a go, if it's a no, if it's a complete go, if it's a complete no-go, or if we need to roll up our sleeves and.
Well, as I said, we're all in up until that decision is made. But if it doesn't work out this year,
Yes.
Our club's probably gonna ask to pull out, because, I mean, it's been 6 years, it'll be 9 years before we get to that point. You know, and we wanna show that faith, but, you know, we're kind of at that point.
Well, we appreciate, I personally appreciate the support of the club in the park projects that we have done today. It's been fantastic. And that you guys have a legacy in the community that is notable and appreciated by,
We built the basketball courts.
like I said, appreciated by the citizens of South Whidbey and the citizens of our district, and just pass thanks from our board to the.
All right, so again, our commitment to you is we're in this together until, you know, the decision comes down later this month, and if you would let us know, you know, hear otherwise what that decision is. I mean, we hope we come up above the line, and you know, as you said, you find a way to come up with the matching funds, and we'll be happy to contribute to those if that situation comes in. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving me a few minutes to talk to you.
Thanks for being patient.
So sorry you had to
Yeah,
wait.
so sorry.
Sign.
Ready for the next thing?
I hope so.
Okay. Okay, the county has indicated that the permit request has reached past its initial review stage and has been passed on to other departments for future permit approval. It sounds like the same will be permitted at the road/entrance to the trail as opposed to set way back. There was some discussion about that. The remaining process of approval may take up to 16 weeks, but it probably won't take that long. And then after that will be the actual signage.
Did Pat come back with an updated drawing yet?
I think he did. I think there were 2 versions that I saw pass
He
by.
came and he pen and inked the.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then was gonna come back with an update.
Okay. Yeah. I think there were
Okay.
2 versions
Okay.
that I saw pass by.
Okay.
Do you want to move on to the fee schedule?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We'd like to discuss adding the doghouse to our facility rental list and add our schedule, please. Requested to use the facility mainly for dog classes, outsider offerings, choose that list of available facilities. This would require what, I can show you what the proposed ones are and what we currently pay now. But
So-
I read this earlier, it looks completely reasonable.
I guess.
So they want to rent it to run other programming outside of
So
the
we-
programming within.
So we've got the pickle of, we have multiple people that do dog classes, and a lot of them do the same thing, but they don't understand, like, they're not going to step on each other's toes and teach the other class within Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
But there's, like, we have one where she does, like, nose work tests. And so what she's been having to do is, like, rent a crow's nest, but it's not, you know, it's not a great facility.
Right.
For the most part,
Gotcha.
they're still heading out somewhere, but to be able to have something that's more centralized, she already has classes in there, she knows the access, she knows there's heat in there, like, it works perfect for it. You know, it's another option for just an indoor space that's in the park besides, because we can't do anything with the crow's nest, and we have picnic shelters, but there's nothing that I would consider
Gotcha.
a lead.
But that wouldn't necessarily be one of the official classes, that it would be in addition to.
Right.
Okay.
And it works good for you guys? I mean, you guys,
It's
everyone's on board with it?
You know, it's not a perfect facility, so as a location that we rent out, it's a little,
I was thinking,
I don't really want to advertise it as a spot to, you know, have
Right.
a birthday party
Right.
or something like that.
When I first saw it, that was my gut reaction. I'm like, if people really want to rent that, great, you
Right.
know. But yeah, I don't know if there's.
So I guess what I'm, right, so what I'm missing on the memo is something that Doug used to include was staff recommends approval of this or staff recommends disapproval of
recommend
this.
approval.
Thank you. Now, what if I want to have a puppy birthday?
Totally click and it's easy to hose off.
It's approval based on the fee schedule you presented. Right?
So
And it's adding it to
Just to
the
be clear.
inventory of potential.
an indoor spot for water balloon fights, and then Tom doesn't have to get them off the field.
There you go.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, something that was brought up at one time was there's a wrestling club that wanted to look to rent it out as a space where because they have a portable mat, but sometimes they just need an area to be able to roll it out and have some practices.
We could do something like that. Something like that would be perfect.
Oh.
Would it really? You want them rolling out a mat on animals have
Have you
rest
been
on?
into wrestling mat rooms in your life?
The fact that it's,
It's a step up.
Athletes of paradise.
the fact that it's drafty in there will help just kind of keep the air fresh.
Was it a rat situation?
Oh yeah, actually, I was going to ask about that. And a serious question: does it have an infestation problem at all?
It has a regular situation.
More so in the storage area.
Yeah, but isn't that an advantage for the
That's
nose work classes?
part of the dog training.
Nose work training,
Yeah,
right.
that's all part of it.
Yeah, so occasionally, so for instance, last summer, maybe the summer before that, a rat, I think, died up in the rafters. And so it was very fragrant in there for some time. So it's not gonna be a quality.
Your experience?
Yeah, so I maybe wouldn't publish it on the fee schedule such as this. It's for certain, yeah.
Well, for liability though, if there's any droppings in there and something gets sick, that could come back to bite us. Like that. I know there was a mat room in Ellensburg where the police officers have their defensive tactics. Officer became very ill because of that. He actually passed away because of the hantavirus.
Yeah.
If I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
Too.
So
That has been raised up.
maybe if we,
But
if
you're
it
talking
was
about a limited rental.
mouse free,
I mean,
I would
yeah.
be 100% game.
I would say it's as mouse free as the concession stand is in the bathrooms. Yeah, I mean, if you have a maintenance shed, it's like,
I can get in there.
it's definitely something where when I've shown it to people, I've said like, this is not going to be. If you're looking for a classy, nice place to have class, this
You
is
need to have
not.
somebody lead a
That's
cat,
going to be.
lead a cat
Cat.
class in there.
Dude, this falconry class is
Our
going to
cat in the
be.
doghouse?
Yeah, let a couple cats in there for a week.
Right.
Feline nose work.
Nice.
I kind of like it.
I like that.
Okay.
I have a story after.
I'm still good with it, even with the liability issue. As a former customer of said dog classes in there, it works really well. So
I mean, is it a question, do we put it on the schedule or not, just to de-emphasize it?
I
Keep it
don't.
off the schedule, but it's available, the staff can rent it, if they find the right opportunity. Person walks in, they say, you're perfect for this place.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
It's something where more so like I've had people ask about it, and I have to say like that's something we don't have any rental. Like I can't rent it out because we don't have a rental fee. I can't even broach that.
Maybe,
So
yeah,
maybe
maybe
So
not.
now at least if it's on the schedule, then you can say, well, let's go take a look at it and let me talk you out of it kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. We'll
Yeah,
find
maybe
out.
you just asterisk it and say, you know, that it's case by case basis or something like that. At the discretion of the staff.
Yeah.
Not for children's party, children's activities.
Yeah, at the discretion of park staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Great work.
Can someone rent online, or do they have to call?
They
Okay,
have to, yeah.
nice. So they'll have to have
There's
discussion
a
about it.
process, yeah.
Yeah, can't, yeah,
They
they don't just
can't
pick it.
just do it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
That's good, that's good.
Okay, I need a motion.
I make a motion to, add the proposed rental fee schedule for the doghouse to our facility rates.
Can we just approve the updated?
Approve the, okay, I make a motion to approve the updated, schedule of, fees.
I'll second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the updated schedule of fees. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Chris, aye.
Jake, I.
And I,
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Committee reports.
Because I really think it would be great if we had longer meetings.
Well, I think we've actually gone through, a number of different, committee, I mean, we touched on trails with the Max Welton Trail sign.
Well, I guess the topic is more, should we move to a format where committees are reporting on their respective committees?
So in the interest of
Yeah.
taking something off of Carrie's plate, we don't have to funnel it through
Yeah.
Carrie. There will be a committee report.
Yep.
The two people who are on the committee make a brief report and then carry on.
I love that idea.
As long as,
If there's something specific that we want to send to Carrie to have in writing in advance, that's cool. Okay.
and if there are any documents, we can give them to Carrie to add to the board.
So it's campground.
Yeah.
Aquatic center,
Trails,
trails,
Lake,
Lakes,
lakes.
amphitheater.
Okay.
fields.
Fields.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let you hang
Love
out. Fields.
Please, Fields.
And then on that, I have something that just might interest trails. Emmy Gunn from Langley Parks and Open Space Committee, she contacted me and we met and just talked park stuff for a little bit. And she was interested, or Langley was interested, in just floating it out there for down the road or something, but a trail from here to Langley. It's not the,
That's
it's
fantastic.
not the main road.
Right,
Um, So that would be, a few different land entities. The school district would probably be pretty easy, but there's some private land in there too. And she didn't know how to get it going, and I wasn't gonna pretend like I did right then and there, but we were both like, that's something amazing deal with the campground,
Oh, yeah.
extra tourism, going to Langley, coming back.
Well, it's because the county has a right of way on Maxwell Road. I think it's 20 feet. Is it 20 feet? Because when we were doing the permit thing, one of the questions was, do we have to put our sign outside the county right of way? So like in the woods, because the county right of way is 20 feet plus or minus. That's how this trail was constructed. Right there, it's in the county right of way. It's the same.
Okay.
The state highway right of way is how that trail was built in Freeland, the one in Coopville that goes along with the Kettles. That's in the state highway right of way. You have to ask in case the state say, I want to build a trail in the right of way, and they say sure. And then they also, there's an asterisk at the bottom that says, if we ever make the highway wider, your trail gets paved over.
You're extinguished
And that's why we couldn't use grant money to do it.
because it
Like,
didn't
we
have
couldn't
perpetuity.
request grant money because they say if we give you this million, you have to protect that perpetuity, and you can't because you're in the right of way. And the problem is, if they ever do pave it over, you have to replace that in kind. So you have to come up with another way to get from Langley to Park 20 years from now. So, but still, it's a right of way, and if we could find a way to work with Langley and just build a trail in it, and without using
state.
encumbered funds, as they call it, and great, if 20 years from now it gets paved over, then, okay. But for 20 years, it's been great.
There is a comprehensive trail plan, because I've looked at that extensively, and I know that's part of it.
You're talking about the county.
Yeah, I'm talking about with the county, right, they just haven't followed through on everything yet.
Yeah, well, they got little
You know
lines.
why?
I know the.
Yeah, I know.
The ridiculous
I know the book to
stretch they
bridge
did in
comprehensive
Freeland
plan,
cost
but I was
over $1
curious
million.
Yeah, part of it is they have plans all over, little T's that come off that, so I know Maxwell is one of them. You might.
Well, so, so what they would tell you is they want to find a local entity to help make the little yellow line on their map. So they'll help, in terms of getting approval to do something in the right of way, or in the, what do they call it, setback. They'll say, well, if it lines up with the trail plan and there's a little yellow line on our map, okay, it'll take 16 weeks, but we'll approve it. So,
Well,
like I
and
said,
as property acquisition, the property owners don't want to give half the time, they're like, no, we don't want to.
well, but it's the county right of way, so you can go right straight across, as long as you're inside that
Well, yeah.
20-foot thing, right? You got it. But like I said, I think you can also go kind of back through our 5-acre thing and wind your way around, and we have to get a bunch of easements and stuff.
Was she wanting it, did you say they wanted it to not be on the road?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, because there is pretty ample shoulders there, but hiking, biking, equestrian, just a better, safer route for kids. And it was just kind of more of a floating, just Q&A idea that she had, Langley had, and they wanted to float it to us. And I told her I would bring it up to the Trails Committee and commissioners and park staff as a whole. So it's just I love it. They want to partner with us.
I don't.
In 2026, I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't want to belabor this too much more, but I have another floating idea for trails, maybe specific trails, but an off-leash dog time. Like, off-leash dogs can be on the Maxwell Trail up until 8:30 a.m. And then maybe after, well, later on, you have sunset and sunrise, but some sort of specific time when off-leash dogs are allowed. Because with particularly this new Maxwell Trail, it's connected to the school trails. And I'll tell you, 95% of the people walking those trails have their dogs off leash. And they're going to be going over on that trail. So rather than having this tension between now you're on park trails and you have to have your dog on leash and these are off leash, if we can open up a specific time, then maybe we would get compliance the rest of the time. Just something to think about, perhaps for the next Trails meeting or another board meeting, but something to think about.
That's an interesting idea. I wonder if anybody has any experience in some other park district where they do that kind of thing?
That was my question, yeah.
I can do some
It's like the motorboat hours at Deer Lake, like 11 to 4 or whatever.
Right.
But it's so much easier to say no if you can say but yes here.
Come back after dark.
Or just,
you get the hours of
if
8:30 to 9.
if the argument with the school trails is that, kids are on them, right? So if we keep in mind what school hours are, if we make it, again, before 8:30 or before 9 a.m. or whenever school starts, and then something in the evening, like after 5, like, even though we have seasonality, there's still a lot of room there. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my feedback on the language thing, it would be really interesting to find out if they are willing to.
It isn't
that by 8:30 or 9.
But I mean, just to find out, are they like ready to chip in a couple
Are we
people?
adjourned?
We're ready to adjourn.
It was
Are we
very
ready to adjourn?
casual, just
Yeah, okay.
shooting out like they would like to partner with us if they can. They haven't met in months, so they want to kind of get their committee going again, and so they want us to know that they're there for us, and hopefully vice
And
versa.
between us, we could probably sit in on their next meeting if you connect with us.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can shoot an email and say
Yeah,
I can forward that.
I think.
All of us.
There's only
Yeah.
five.
No more than 2 commissioners on an email.
No, you can send one out, but you can't reply all. If I understand it correctly.
I can
think-
send one.
She's the only one who can send to more than 2.
Oh, so you can send it to Carrie, Carrie
Yeah.
can send it to the two of us.
Oh, okay,
You gotta
sorry.
play telephone.
I was staying correct. Oh,
As
I
far
thought you
as I
could,
know anyways.
I thought you could send it out, but then you couldn't reply. But yeah,
It's a good question, that's a good question, but I think it's safest if you send it to
Yeah.
Carrie, Carrie sends it to
And
us.
then I try
That's
to
how Doug
send
explained it to me.
BCCs
I can
so
only
that you guys
email
don't
one
have to
other
record
commissioner.
reply.
Oh, yeah,
Directly.
and
Yeah.
I'll volunteer to go to the first one. So you don't have to go.
Whatever, I don't care, I'm happy to go.
Okay.
We
Then
can
you
go
can take
together.
the first one, and I'll go the second.
All right. We are adjourned at
Right on.
9:24.
At 8:24.
All right, so here's my funny story about cats.
Oh,
So,
Still being recorded.
who's this?
Oh,
Is that the old one?